Your attention. Before I call the meeting to order, let me just state that I'm acting as Vice President in the place of Tom Herrick, who has stepped down as President. And this is the time, so if you all rise to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Can I ask for additions or approval of the agenda?
Yes, thank you, Director Stevens. I actually have two additions. I'll start with the first one. I have a topic of election to fill Association's Office of the Presidency vacancy, and I have a motion ready for conducting that election. I'd like to see if you all are in favor of adding that.
Does everybody approve of that addition?
Aye.
Yes.
I also have a second addition. The topic is termination of Brett Hill as the acting general manager, and I have a motion.
Look, I'll tell you one thing right now. Another outburst like that, and I will clear the room. And if you don't believe me, then you're very badly mistaken. Very bad. You'll try me. Try me.
And I have a motion to read for such action.
Do we have a second to that? Addition? It's the second to the addition to the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor? All opposed?
Dave.
I would like to recommend,
Dave.
what? Cheryl?
Let me get this on. I would like to amend the agenda not by adding items, but by deleting some items. And I would like to delete items, the following items. Under old business, motion food and beverage consultant. Under new business, motion to remove a committee member. And under capital purchase requests, accounting software.
I'll second that.
The reason that I'm asking that these items be removed from the agenda are that they have previously been presented to the board and have already been voted on. Regarding the food and beverage consultant, this was presented to the board on July the 9th at our meeting, and it was defeated by a 5-2 vote. Now, some people may not be happy with the results of that vote, but that is what the board voted on. There is no change in this motion that's being brought back, and you don't get two bites at the apple. Additionally, the motion to remove a committee member was also a matter that had been added to the agenda, It was brought forth in the July 9th meeting by Mr. Hill when he was wearing the hat of a director rather than an AGM, because you cannot make a motion as an AGM. And it was a vote of 4-3 that we would not deal with that matter. Again, I would say it has been brought to the committee. It had been brought to the board previously, and we voted on it. Again, you don't get 2 bites at the apple. And as far as the accounting software is concerned, I would like to remind the board that we, in a special meeting, had talked about what the responsibilities of the acting general manager should be going forward. And it was agreed unanimously by the board at that time that they were not going to be starting any new projects, but rather he would continue to manage the day-to-day operations, as well as any projects that had already been started. But the clear direction from the board was not to start any new projects, not to make personnel decisions. And so it'd be improper to bring this forward at this point, particularly since the good news is we've hired a new GM, and he will be here shortly. So these matters should wait for the new GM.
Any other discussion?
Well, for clarification, the food and beverage consultant at the July 9th meeting, I was directed to go back and try and obtain local vendors. I reached out to the vendor that Mr. Chendick recommended from Ocean Pines and Matt Orr companies, and they declined to respond. As well as from the staff, another consultant was recommended who it turned out we had gone to their national offices, went back to their local office, and they also declined in not having resources. So I went back and did obtain, or tried to obtain local quotes and was unable to. So I'm looking at our food and beverage numbers. We definitely need help, and that's why it's brought back to the table. Regarding the accounting software was a process that started back in February. This is nothing new. And at this point, we're paying almost $1,000 a day for a consultant to be in here that can handle the system we're working in, because we do not have the in-house abilities to even process our data. So this is something that's costing the association money every single day that we're prolonging a decision. And when it was originally tasked with Mary Bozak and myself with the technology work group back in February, we were looking for a 60-day transition plan, which now we're at pushing 180 days and not at a point of action. So that's why it's brought up today for discussion. If it wants to be tabled, that's fine, but I think it merits having the discussion today.
I think there's been a lot of information that accompanied that proposal, and I certainly, in my opinion, the discussion is warranted. Cheryl?
Mr. Hill's correct in that we have been working on this for some time, but the we that's been working on it has been the technology work group headed by Mr. Parks, and unfortunately he was not able to be here today. In fact, the technology work group was in a position to be able to do something until we had a change in personnel. And Mr. Viola, our new Director of Finance, who's currently on vacation, has been in the process of working with the TWG group, who I might say and thank them very much. This is a very hard-working group of volunteers who do have the expertise and have spent countless hours evaluating various software programs, because what Mr. Hill says is absolutely accurate. We do need help in this regard, but we were just at the point of doing demonstrations with the various vendors and Mr. Viola just before he went on vacation, and so this process was going to continue with the live demos upon his return, and it is going to be a major undertaking to change to a new software system. And so I think, again, that we've hired a new GM. Let's let him be involved in this process. I don't think this is appropriate to begin this now.
Pat?
I agree with Cheryl. I think that we should, I may support the recommendation, and I know that Mr. Viola has looked at the recommendation for the software and is very supportive of it. And certainly, we would want to go with our Director of Finance's decision. But I feel, yeah, we need help in the back office. We need help in the general ledger. We need help in financial statement production. To date, all our financials are accurate. We don't have to worry about that. But the process is so cumbersome that it is like 1952 or something. So I support Cheryl just pushing this forward until we have a new GM, Mr. Viola is back, and we've had a chance to really make a critical and just assessment of the situation. So Cheryl, is your motion, is it an all or nothing for those three items? I mean, how is this going to work?
No, they would
No,
be-
they're each individual.
Yes.
John Sullivan, you had your hand up.
Thank you. I just want to add to what Director Supik and Director Jacobs stated. I'm totally in favor of deferring the decision till the GM is on board. And I think Director Parks also sent his view on the subject to the entire board. And he has asked that the decision be delayed till the technology group also has an opportunity to finish and validate the decision. So I'm very much in favor of deferring this to September. And on the subject of food and beverage, I also would like to request that be taken off the agenda. Director Hill is coming back with a recommendation to go with the West Coast consultants again, which is the same that he proposed last time. And I don't think that's appropriate. There are plenty of people on the East Coast and on Eastern Shore that can do this job.
Tom?
I just have just two quick comments. The food and beverage, I mean, we all know that we have a problem with food and beverage. We've all discussed it for months. Acting general managers bringing a solution to the table. To just dismiss it because they're not from the local area, it doesn't help the community. There's a professional consultant that we can bring in here that can help us, that can path the way to what needs to be done, so when the new GM comes in here, that person will have a clear understanding of what the deficiencies are, and he can immediately address them. And I think to benefit the community, I think that needs to be done as quick as possible. We lost quite a bit of money last month in food and beverage, especially at the Cove. And this is a small amount of money to invest and spend for the association to start moving in the right direction. To just constantly postpone it when we have a problem does not do the association any justice. So I think that he reached out for locals. He was not able to get locals. He's bringing it back to the table for us to have discussion. And maybe we can move forward and try to help the community in the food and beverage facilities. Secondly, I just need some more clarification because I understood at the last meeting, as far as the vote for the committee removal, remember, I don't believe it was a vote for or not to remove. I just thought it was to table the motion at that time. So from my understanding, there was no vote to remove the committee member, yes or no.
Cheryl?
First, let me address the issue of the food and beverage. Director Trendick is correct, and that is that this is exactly the same motion that was put before us. We had a discussion about why it was not a good idea to have a West Coast firm, and while the board very much appreciates all the effort that Mr. Hill has put into this effort to try to find somebody local, it's not his fault that he wasn't able to come up with anybody else, and while the board appreciates you attempting to resolve this matter, I believe that nothing has changed in terms of our belief that a West Coast firm is really not appropriate. And let me say further that while we are all in agreement that we need help in this regard, unfortunately, we're almost near the end of our high season, and to get a West Coast firm in here at this point is not going to be any kind of an overnight fix. we're talking about negotiating a contract with these people, and then whatever amount of time it takes, and we have to pay them to come in to do their analysis, is not going to be a quick fix. Quick fixes have been suggested and have been rejected. And so at this point, I'm sure the GM, who has the background that we want for a GM and more experience, will be able to will be able to investigate and perhaps come up with a better option for us. So I don't think, and again, the board appreciates very much the work that Mr. Hill did, but I don't think this is the right answer for us at this point. And with regard to the motion to remove a committee member, that's exactly the motion that was put forward by Mr. Hill at the last meeting when this was brought up, and there was a vote. And I would say, how else can you interpret that vote other than we didn't want that to happen when we voted 4-3 as a board? And so again, you don't get two bites of the apple. Other members have been criticized for not accepting what the board decides, and this would be an example of not accepting what the board decided, and just because you didn't like the outcome, trying to put it in front of us again. And so I'm totally opposed to that.
Cheryl, if I may. There is no applause. Stop it. We've got a crowded room, you know. We can stay here all day. I can call a recess. You want me to pull out my Roberts? Cheryl, my recollection is that we did not discuss it. The name of the person, it was on the motion that was handed out, but we did not discuss it. We did not have a vote. It was tabled. Brett withdrew it, as I recall. Brett?
It never was approved for the agenda.
It was never approved for the agenda? Correct. So it was not discussed before. It just wasn't. Now, if I can comment on the other two, I think there was a sense of the board, and probably is the same sense, that the food and beverage companies from the West Coast, although we have a lot more information on them presented with this now. And, I don't have any doubt about their qualifications. But I'd have to disagree with Mr. Herrick that without having any experience on the East Coast or in this area, on the one hand, they can bring in objectivity, but on the other, lacking local knowledge has to be a disadvantage. I don't believe the motion would pass, and I don't think I don't see any benefit to adding or not removing it from the agenda, or leaving it on the agenda. As far as the software for the accounting, what's on the agenda is, we're not going to take a vote on buying that software today. I wouldn't vote for it with what I know right now, which is way too little. On the other hand, there's a lot of information that's being presented with it, and I think it's being added to the agenda for discussion. But if you think we don't have to discuss it, the majority of the board doesn't think so, then that's fine. I think we should, but so we can call the questions one at a time. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman. Just a final comment on motion to remove a committee member. Let's face it, this motion is designed to create a censorship by the board on a homeowner in this community that has expressed his opinion on the performance related to the acting general manager.
Excuse me, but point of order. What you are doing is exactly what we would do if we leave it on the agenda and put it to the board members for a vote. You're not discussing about whether it should be on the agenda. You're discussing the merits of the case itself.
And precisely the reason why I believe it doesn't belong on the agenda, because it's really not for a board to do a censorship of the community's voice.
Are you maintaining that the board does not have the right to do this? Is that's,
Precisely. What was done was written by a homeowner, and I don't believe the board has the authority to censor the voice of a homeowner.
Could I just bring up something, Dave?
may I? Yeah, I do.
Dave, I just want to make, a comment according to Mr. Trendick's statement. I just want to bring up maybe a reminder to Mr. Trendick, but back in September 1st of last year, you were on the club's committee as liaison, and you asked for me personally to ask Mr. Miller to immediately resign from that club's committee. And the reasons that you gave at the time was that in a recent interview with a reporter from the local newspaper, his comments were totally unprofessional and inappropriate, and it reflected negatively on the OPA board and its individual directors. And that was your statement, and you asked me to have him resign. My reply as president was that I was in a position to mediate, and for our community, we need to heal, unite, and move forward together. And I truly believe that we could put these controversies aside by working together. Unfortunately, this has not happened.
Let me respond. I'd like to read it. All members, Section 10.03 of the bylaws, committees and advisory bodies, all members serve at the pleasure of the board and may be removed by the board with or without cause at any time. So I would ask for a show of hands as to whether or not this should remain on the agenda or not.
Are you going to go item by item?
Well, yeah, let's go item by item. Let's take the software, the accounting software. Those in favor of leaving it on the agenda? Got 4. The food and beverage. Those in favor of leaving it on the agenda?
Excuse me, point of order.
Yes.
Ask for those in favor.
I'm sorry, yes. Those against? Yeah, 4-2.
For the reason.
Okay, those in favor of the food and beverage?
Leave it on.
Of leaving the food and beverage on the agenda? Against? Okay, 4-2 against. Those in favor of leaving the removal motion on the agenda? Against? So we have a tie in that case. And since, yeah, the fourth one, well, first of all, we'll resolve the tie. I believe that the motion to remove was, by virtue of the tie, is just nullified and that it remains on the agenda.
May I comment on that? May I remind the chairman that at the last meeting when this was brought up by Director Hill, that Director Parks requested more time for him to consider this and to consider the implications of such actions. With Director Parks not being present, I think it's only appropriate that the topic be removed from the agenda so that his views can be taken into consideration.
It is unfortunate that Director Parks can't be here, but his absence has nothing at all to do with this vote, for or against.
Make it for Saturday, he can come.
Okay, let me go to the fourth item on the agenda, which is your motion. And
Which one?
To be added.
I had two
the
motions.
motion to call for a vote on the president.
On the election?
Yeah, on the election.
Yeah.
Pardon? We're still getting into the amended agenda. Did we?
We approved both the
We approved Slobodan's? Okay, all right. You got it.
changes, so there's no other, we have to approve the agenda.
Okay. All those in favor of approving the agenda as amended, raise your hand. All those opposed? Okay. The agenda's now amended and in place. What do we got next? I'll now move on to the approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of June 19th, 2017?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
June 22nd, 2017.
So
Special
moved.
meeting. Moved. Do we have a second? All in favor? June 23rd, 2017, regular meeting.
So moved.
All in favor? July 6th and 7th, 2017, special meetings.
So moved.
All in favor? July 9th, 2017, special meeting.
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Moving on, let me have a little drink of water here. I'll make some brief remarks. We had what I consider is some pretty good news. We confirmed that with Ruth Ann. Our attorney notified us that since January 1st of this year, our attorneys have collected $84,052 in unpaid assessments and related charges, legal fees, interest, and costs. Some of these, Ruth Ann tells me, dates back quite a way, and they're fairly significant amounts. And this is sort of a 7-month effort since January 1st, and it sort of bodes well for the future if we can continue to this. We can continue to reduce the unpaid assessments less. I'll note that without going into any detail, because I can't, I don't know how, our attorney continues to examine alternatives for extending the use of the OASIS as an adult pool. The three that he passed by me very briefly and without detail, after discussion, none of them appeared to be practical, unfortunately. Now, I'm sorry, yes?
I just wanted to ask a question on the first item that you talked about. Do you know if that was strictly through court action that money was collected, or was it a combination of letters and court action?
No, I don't, Cheryl.
Okay.
Brett?
That is through letters and notification of court action. So our attorneys filed, I believe, 134 judgments to follow the liens that had been placed on properties, and many of them had gone back as far as 10 years. In the pretrial negotiations, the amount that you mentioned, the $84,000, has been collected. Additionally, there are negotiations on several for payment plans, and we're beginning to see court cases now come up on the docket where we will hopefully see further judgments. And in the last month, we've seen a significant amount of activity as it's approaching the court dates of people coming at the last minute, and now that they're seeing something pop up on their credit report or that there's actually a personal attachment, there's become a motivation to pay.
My last comment, there was a news release today to the press and on eBlast that John Bailey has been named as our general manager for the Ocean Pines Association. When will he start? Starting the 11th. I know it was the first 2 weeks in September. This was a very long and very thorough search process. After a nationwide search and review of approximately 100 candidates, the board of directors came to the conclusion that John would best fit our association. He has more than 10 years' experience managing 2 other large HOAs and several years of municipal government experience. He's managed multiple amenities in his previous HOA experience, and I can add from memory, including a food and beverage operation at one of the larger ones, and he, including the start of his career, was as a golf professional, so he's very familiar with golf operations. He'll be moving into the area with wife Meredith and 2 children, Chase and Augustine. John's first official day as general manager will be September 11th. The board of directors appreciates the patience of the community as we completed this search and are very excited to welcome John to Ocean Pines. And that concludes the president's remarks. May we have the treasurer's report? Pat.
I apologize that we don't have the screen up here today, so numbers, even difficult on the screen, are going to be more challenging. I'll try to be concise with the numbers part of my report. The net operating for assessments and other revenue, $7,624. That's high because it's the beginning of the year. We take in all the assessments and then we spend them on police and public works and things like that during the year. Amenities, $651 for a total of $8,275. We transferred to reserves out of that $3,458, and we spent on new capital $46, making the bottom line after the transfers $4,771. This, pardon? Well, it's right, but this is in thousands. I always present in thousands. I can say millions if that's more comfortable. The significant variances, which for Ocean Pines, since we budget a zero bottom line because of our operating structure, whenever we have a negative variance in our financial statements, that equates to a loss. At this point in time, 2 months into the year, we have a loss of 286, which is thousands, not dollars, 286,000, and that is driven by a loss in amenities revenue of 266,000 and an expense variance over budget of about $20,000 net between wages being under budget significantly and supplies and services being over budget. For reserves and capital, we ended June 30, 2017 with a balance in replacement reserves of $5,937 and in bulkhead reserves of $2,625. Of those amounts, we have budgeted to spend for the year from the replacement reserves $1,683 and from the bulkhead reserves $1,957. No significant capital items. Some capital items have been purchased, new capital, but no significant replacement capital items have been purchased to date. That concludes the financial report part of my presentation. The other area is the reserve study, which we had a reserve study done. I'm not sure of the date. I wasn't around. 2016, I think it was. It was about a year ago, a little more than a year ago probably. And part of that engagement with the firm that did the reserve study was to, as makes good sense, to periodically update the reserve study, given capital spend and cash inflows into the reserve. As a result of that, we formed a reserve analysis working group. The members of that group are Dave Stevens, Tom Herrick, John Viola, myself, John O'Connor, Marty Clark, Ted Maroney, and Gene Ringsdorf. The purpose of the work group is to analyze and update as appropriate the DMA reserve study completed for Ocean Pines in 2016 and to make recommendations to the Board of Directors for the amount and adequacy of the reserves accumulated for capital maintenance and improvements. This is a topic that has been discussed since I've been on the Budget and Finance Committee years ago, and I think that this is a much-needed effort to finally bring some reason and sense and legitimacy to the amount of reserves that Ocean Pines carries. The current planned activity, the group has met twice. It agreed that the new starting point would be 2018, which is our FY 2018, which we're in right now, and to use our balance sheet and operating results to update the asset list. Dave Stevens has contacted Doug Green, who is the person we work with at DMA, who's on board with this approach. He's on vacation right now, but when he returns, we will get full speed ahead with the meetings and working through updating the DMA report. We'll meet with Doug Green when he returns. We're going to update with the capital component, and then the reserve study has a cash flow projection out 30 or 40 years. We're going to begin by simply updating the current year, the next year, and move forward with those numbers. Our goal is to recommend to the Board of Directors a short and long-term funding plan for the Ocean Pines reserves, including amounts and timing of the funding. The reserves will support the maintenance, renovation, and replacement of our existing assets, both small and large. We have a significant amount of what could be considered smaller assets like vehicles, not buildings, vehicles, and they total, I think, $3 or $4 million just for the vehicles. So we need to put all of those in the mix, not just buildings. Requirements for new or significantly improved assets may be funded by methods other than reserves, and this can be established through a evolving strategic plan. Elements of these two efforts, the updating of the reserve, the strategic plan, would go together, and hopefully the end result would be a capital improvement plan. The FY 2017 financial statement audit is complete. We received an unqualified opinion, which is the highest opinion on the legitimacy of our financial statements. They opined that they do present fairly Ocean Pines' financial position at June 30, 2017. For the year ended, we posted a $369,539 loss. That loss will need to be funded since, again, we budget no income to the bottom line as part of our budget process. That loss will need to be funded going forward either from the reserves or what would be my recommendation as treasurer to fund it in future assessments. In addition to the financial statement audit this year, which is something we have done every year, we have a financial statement audit. We have new auditors this year. The auditors were voted on and approved unanimously by a board chosen from 3. We submitted, requests for proposal to 5. 2 declined, 3 responded. The board approved the selected auditors, SC&H, unanimously. In addition to the financial statement audit this year, given the significant change in all the changes occurring in Ocean Pines, it was deemed prudent to engage these auditors not just to do the financial statement audit, which while it looks at internal controls and reviews transactions, is not a deep dive. It's not by its nature a deep dive. That's not the definition of it. So we indicated to the auditors that in addition to the financial statement audit, we wanted this deep dive into our transactions, our internal controls. And that deep dive has been completed. We do not have the report yet. As stated, our Director of Finance is out of the country right now, and he is critical in ensuring that the report is accurate, covers everything. So the field work for that report is complete. However, we do not have the report. I know I've already talked several times to the partner in the engagement in the audit firm, and he has indicated that there will be recommendations, there will be findings, as we thought there would be. When that is received, it will be shared.
Thank you, Pat. The general manager's report.
Well, Dave, Pat, you took several of the highlights of what I had to report on that, we're in a very good position.
Oh, sorry, Brett.
As far as collections.
I'm new at this.
Yeah, that's okay. And the audit report is definitely a big accomplishment that should be published on the website today. That was just distributed to us last night, and it was passed on to Denise for public publication. We're about halfway through the season now. Our amenities are running strong. There's definitely rooms for improvement, and I'm working with the staff to do that.
I'm sorry. Sure. On the general managers? I'm sorry, Slobodan. All right. At this point, introduce into the agenda the Slobodan's motion to fill the vacancy left by Tom Herrick in resigning as president. Do I have a nomination?
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Chairman, allow me to read the motion first, please. I move that pursuant to OPA bylaws, Article 6, the officers of the association, Section 604, vacancies, the directors of this board elect today the new president of the association. Background. On July 26, 2017, Director Herrick submitted his resignation as the president of the association via a written notice which was received by all directors. Discussion. Section 604, vacancies from the OPA bylaws, states, a vacancy in any office shall be filled for the unexpired portion of the term by a person elected by the Board of Directors at the next regular meeting of the board or at a special meeting called for that purpose. Furthermore, please note that Section 605, multiple offices, states, no person holding the office of the President, Vice President, Secretary, or a Treasurer may at the same time hold any other office of the association.
Discussion? Yeah, I will add to that, Slobodan, relative to the last provision, that I have a letter of resignation as Vice President to become effective should I be nominated and elected to the role as President.
Thank you.
Do we give nominations now?
Can I ask for nominations now?
Dave?
Yes?
I would nominate Dave Stevens to serve as president for the last couple of weeks. He's had the experience in the past. He served as president. Excuse me. Some courtesy at all, please.
Yeah, there is little courtesy,
Really?
and, I don't know what's
Wow.
wrong with you people. We're conducting business. We're conducting business. And if you don't like it, leave.
Mr. Stevens has served this community for many years. His dedication and tribute to our association should be now noted. He served as president in the past, and this would be a tribute to let him finish his last term as president.
Is there a second? Are there any other nominations? I'll call for votes.
Before you do that, can I just make it clear to everybody that this is, I hope you understand, this is for the limited period of time until such time as we have elected a new board, and then after that, there will be again a vote on all of the officers of the association. So we're talking about a couple of weeks here.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Cheryl. I was going to make it myself. We're talking about a couple of weeks.
And I believe in the best interest of Ocean Pines, the person that has served as vice president and been active and has taken part in all of the president's duties when the president's not there is a very logical fit to work through the end of the year and maintain stability in the leadership of Ocean Pines.
Any other nominations? There being no other nominations, well, I'll call for the vote anyway. All those in favor? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Moving right along at an entertaining pace.
No. You've now,
Would you submit your resignation now to the board,
I
please?
do have the resignation if I can find it in all my papers. You'll take my word for it, I
That's all
guarantee
right.
it.
We can
I
accept the
guarantee
verbal.
I guarantee it's there. Now, do we want to fill the office of vice president?
Yes,
yes.
yes.
I get several affirmative nods. Do I have a nomination for the office of vice president?
I nominate Tom Herrick. No, I think you don't want it. I guess I should have checked first. No, okay.
Again, this is for 2 weeks we're talking about.
I'll decline that position.
Careful, Pat. I nominate Pat Supik.
She can't,
Then-
she's the
no,
treasurer.
I'm
I can't.
treasurer.
She's a treasurer already.
I don't
I
wanna step- I don't wanna
apologize.
step
I
down.
withdraw that nomination. Go ahead, Cheryl.
I nominate Doug Parks to be the vice president.
I will second that. Third,
All in favor? Aye. And tough luck if he's not here.
Well, I might add that this has been discussed with him, and I think he's okay with it.
Pardon, I didn't hear you say.
I will add that this has been discussed with him, and I believe he would not decline.
No, I don't think he'd decline either.
and just to make it a matter of a record, the board does accept Vice President David's resignation as a vice president of the association effective immediately, so that there is no double holding of the office.
Yeah, actually. Bylaws say that it doesn't have to be accepted, it can be just,
Just duly noted.
yeah,
The
duly,
resignation is duly noted.
duly noted, okay. All right, moving right along to my favorite part, public comments. And before we begin public comments, I would ask that the public comments, given the size of the audience, be limited to 3 minutes. I would further ask that those who wish to speak on a subject really limit their time if that subject has already been addressed by somebody before them, and if they have nothing really further to say on the subject. Well, I don't know. We've got Gary Miller coming up. We've got, fight it out.
All right, I'll go first. You do? No, you just got to stand in line next to the mic. You want to go first since you were standing closer? Sure. I gotta go to work, but it's all right. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
All right, I'll do it quick. I'll be quick. I'll do it quick, whatever you want to do. I'm Tom Janusek, 17.
Yes, yeah,
Let's get closer to you guys.
Cheryl suggests that you all form a line, and,
All
Okay.
right, there's a line. All right, Tom Janusek, 17, Lookout Point. You guys, you really need it? I would ask, and I have no pull on this, and I know we're all here for the same reasons. There's probably 3 or 4 of them. Just be civil. I went through 7 years of coming in here with 3 people yelling at the old GM, and it's just, it just pays to be civil. I understand that we're all upset, and we're looking at the same numbers and going through the same stuff, and we read the forum. I would just ask that we be relatively civil. I'm going to attempt to do that. I got to tell you, I honestly can't believe that I'm up here. I never thought after last year's election I would have to come up here and complain again about the yacht club and all the other stuff and the dysfunctionality of the board. It's absolutely ludicrous. After last Sunday's meetings, you guys should be ashamed to yell at them about making noise after what you guys went through and did on TV that I watched. I was ashamed to be an Ocean Pines member watching that. And it's so severely dysfunctional, and I blame all of you. I mean, there's no reason. I can remember when I was about to run for the board last year, and I sat at Fager's talking to Slobodan and Doug and everybody, and Slobodan wasn't going to run. He just wanted to be the GM, and I didn't think that was going to happen, but, I figured, what the heck, I'm not going to appoint him, but if I got elected, we'll see what happens. So in the meantime, it seems like he's angry for whatever reason, and instead of going to the board and approaching it through the board, you're going to the press and to the forum and constantly releasing all this information about stuff that shouldn't be released. I mean, it shouldn't. I mean, I think everybody in the room knows about these tapes at this point. I mean, I know I do. It's ridiculous. I mean, everybody got offended. So what? I mean, it happens. I just don't see where going to the press and letting this information out piece by piece is doing anything except for ruining the relationship in the board. It's true. It's absolutely true. Don't shake your head. I know you're doing it. I know you're talking to people at the yacht club. I didn't see you at the yacht club since the election. I've seen you there the last 2 months. So I can tell you, I'm just doing the math. So there's that. And I know that's going to upset people who are here with Slobodan buttons on, but let me tell you, it shouldn't be aired. That stuff that happened 2 weeks ago shouldn't have been aired. You want transparency? You don't need that transparency. We don't need to know what's happened. No, you don't. Nobody needs to know. It's a matter of the board and employees. That's it. So don't.
one speaker at a
One speaker at a time. My talk's not up. I got 5 minutes. So here's the deal. So here we go. So I want to go to the yacht club, which obviously is a debacle from the top down. I think that bringing in somebody from California is a ridiculous idea. It makes no sense. I got a guy sitting on a couch here in Ocean Pines that ran this place to an $11,000 deficit one year, and he would come over and give you some advice. But nobody takes advice. We got a GM, we got a general manager over there who's not been here for a month now, that's still getting paid apparently. He's still on payroll, that's what I hear. We got the new general manager over there is a sous chef. Nothing against Joe, but he's a sous chef. The last 2 times I've been there, I was there on family fun night. I had a kid that's 12 years old sitting at the bar having dinner with his parents. I don't know if you know, but liquor license don't approve that. That's pretty bad. We got all these brand new cameras, but nobody can see that. Then I'm over there yesterday, and I've got dog poop all over the floor, and nobody behind the bar will go pick it up. Then I had to hand deliver sweet honey mustard sauce to a lady in the pool because nobody would take that out to her after she waited 30 minutes for chicken fingers. This all starts at the top, and it's rotten from the head down. It's really ridiculous. You're promoting from within. You're giving barmaids a bartender job. You're giving bartenders a bar manager job. You're giving food walkers a bartending job who've never turned a bar. I know this because I'm there. So these are the problems we all know. We saw it's the worst loss we've ever had. I'm not going to go into the numbers. I have a recommendation. My recommendation is this, that Brett step down as GM and let Colby take it over for the last 30 days. She did it when you were on vacation. She can do it now. I know for a fact she would do it. And I truly believe that Slobodan, with all the dissension you've created in this board, you should resign. That's my recommendation. You guys are all speculating. You don't know the facts.
My name is Bill Sheridan, 398 Ocean Parkway. Hello, can you hear me? It's not very high. Anyways, to follow through those comments, yeah, we're a laughingstock. in the press. The board has arguments. The board has, let's call it groups. I won't call it cliques. That was high school stuff. To get things done. You mentioned about the auditors going in and evaluating our system and coming out with a report. Is that correct? Why are we paying $1,000 for someone to decide what we need? $1,000 a day. I know that's programming, but accounting is programming. So isn't there an overlap there? I'll leave that alone, no answers. Ocean Pines redid what was a country club, now it's the golf club that loses money every year also, just like the yacht club, which is now Mumford's Landing. Change of name does not do anything. But you read the thing about the, excuse me, but I just got out of the hospital recently, that's why I'm holding on. You redid what used to be the country club, now we call it the golf club. Yeah, there's a conference room up there. There's food, beverages, for meetings, for weddings, for guests. It all says that in the Ocean Pines what do you call it? No, the advertisements in Ocean Pines, when you go into the computer. It all says that, in competition with what we're losing over at the yacht club. So here we have two things fighting against each other, both of which are losers. And we're spending dollars. Every year they're losers. Anybody can come up with an answer why we're patting the losers on the back? You know why you couldn't get a chef locally? They all know the mess we're in. And they won't come over here and get in that mess. You have to go all the way to California for someone who doesn't know the mess. So maybe we can find someone locally that's willing to take it on, but that would be difficult. I'll be quick, because you only allowed 15 minutes for everybody. Slobodan, and I don't know, this says remove somebody. You know, the agenda, for some reason, doesn't have a name. But I'm going to follow the reports that I've read, and Slobodan is that person. I'm going to say that he was voted in that chair by hundreds of people. And we're going to try to find 5 to disagree with those hundreds of people. No, I'm done.
I'm Gary Miller, 15 Windward Court, Ocean Pines. I'm the Mr. Miller that is being asked to get off of the committees. I have been a member of the Aquatics Committee for the past 5 years and the Clubs Committee for the past 4 years. In that time, I've spent hundreds of hours working to help make Ocean Pines a better place to live. I've done all sorts of things to help the different committees. This application to be on the advisory committee says nothing about giving up your First Amendment right of free speech at all. Now, because I and a bunch of other people questioned some of the things that were going on with Brett Hill and the way the board was not doing anything to monitor what was happening. And I wrote a couple letters to the editor, to the Bayside Gazette. They were recently published. Apparently, they hit a pretty sour nerve with a couple of the board members. The sad thing right now in Ocean Pines is that if you disagree or have a difference of opinion of the acting GM or a couple of the board members, you are silenced. Whether it's being fired or being asked to resign or being forced to resign, if you look at the number of people that have left this organization, it's staggering. And most of it is because of the actions and the conduct of the GM and a couple of the board members that support him. Everyone who serves on any of the advisory committees spends a lot of time trying to make this community better. Mr. Hill has minimized and marginalized the efforts of all of the committees, and it's a shame. We might not be in this position that we're in right now if the committees had been listened to. So I'm the one that apparently is being looked after to be kicked off 2 committees. With the poor performance of the GM and some of the board members, I would just ask everybody to keep in mind that removing any committee member, whether it's for cause or not, and Dave's right, you all can get rid of anybody you want to. I don't think anybody has any issue with that. The problem is that getting rid of somebody because they speak up, that's a problem. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm a school teacher, so good morning back is good. I'm here to make a request of the board on behalf of the... I'm sorry, I'm Becky Clark. I'm a year-round resident, 866 Ocean Parkway. I'm here to make a request of the board in regard to the yacht club pool while we are in this temporary position that we're in with children being allowed in to try to bring some kind of peace and safety to the yacht club. I am a pool member for the summer. I'm there on a regular basis, as are many people in this room. And what we have seen is a change in the safety of our elderly and our seniors that frequent the pool on a regular basis. So what I'm asking of you is to consult or collaborate with Colby and generate a second set of rules that is unique to the yacht club pool that will ensure the safety of all swimmers. Since the children have come in, we have had seniors hit in the head with Nerf footballs. We have kids running on the pool deck. We have kids jumping in between seniors that are in the pool. Children on flotation devices unsupervised by a parent who are under the age of 5. So if we're going to make this a safe place for all of us to enjoy, the rules are going to have to change, and the guards are going to need to be retrained in how to enforce those rules so this can happen. In addition to that, that's another story, but in addition, you would think that we can rely on the parents to monitor the behavior of the children in a positive manner. We do have some children there, and we have enjoyed them this summer. They're reading, they're in the pool, they're quiet, they're behaving like we would want our children to behave in church, let's put it that way, okay? But we also have parents who are encouraging their children to be as disruptive as you want, quote unquote, one father to his son. And that's not what we need to make this a civil environment for everybody. The last thing, and then I'm done, is I'm going to request of the board that a second legal counsel is consulted who is not related to the board to review the Fair Housing Act or any of the laws that are being cited for this change to happen. So we have an outside input, and that shouldn't involve too much money. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Lower it, I guess. I'm Audrey Wall, 37 Clubhouse Drive, Ocean Pines. Okay. You know, I would just like to add something to the just previous remarks, and that is someone requested that since I was going to be at the meeting, that to post new policy rules at all the amenities, so people are aware of what the policies are, and perhaps will follow the rules, just as a courtesy. I'd also, just for a little humor here, I got an emergency call as I was leaving to come to the meeting from my husband, who plays on a regular basis down at Platform Tennis in the mornings with another group of guys. Everyone was admiring the stakes at what would be, what have been passed as we're going to get some new platform tennis courts. However, the permit that's posted at this site says new pickleball courts. I asked them to check that before I came down here and said that, but I hope that you will, or somebody who's ever in charge, will please go down and make sure it is paddleball courts and not pickleboards that have been given the permit, okay? Okay. I just want to address Dave Stevens in a nice way. You actually are the elder statesman of the board. You've volunteered many hours throughout the years providing input and guidance for the betterment of the Ocean Pines community. You've chosen not to run in this year's election, and as far as we know, that means that you will no longer be on the board next year. I am respectfully asking you today to continue that honorable legacy by setting aside any grievances you may have and take your motion. I don't even know if it's still on the agenda. I was so confused. But anyway, take your motion to remove a hardworking community volunteer member from an advisory committee. Please take it off the agenda. Please table it. Please get rid of it. Please be the key to allow this community to start this new year without negativity and with respect to everyone's voice and efforts in this community.
Bill Cordwell, 558 Ocean Parkway. When I decided to not run for re-election for the board last year, I stated I just didn't want to be around people who didn't want to tell the truth. Well, I could have never guessed how the new board would have turned even more untrustworthy and secretive than what I was experiencing, but it has. I read that some have said that this board has been the most secretive than any in the past 30 years. Well, I've only been around 19 years, so I can't speak to the last, that other 11. Being secretive isn't the worst part. I personally believe this board majority has turned a blind eye to what some would describe as allowing the acting general manager to unilaterally change the entire structure of this organization and get rid of valuable employees. Get rid of valuable employees who do not conform to the acting GM's wishes. Of course, this started with the termination of the last general manager. Apparently, there was no forethought as to what would happen next, as the president didn't even know that he would be the one who would have to fire Thompson, and also didn't have any inclination to take over the GM's duties. We were just coming off the best year this community has had in a long time, but of course, we had some who just wanted to fire the guy so they could say they did and show him who was boss. Well, I guess we can see from the financials over the last year, this might have been one of the biggest mistakes made by this community in a long, long time. I know some of you get a little quiver and probably had a cocktail that night, but that action was all about personal paybacks, had nothing to do with the good of the community. The president of this organization was approached by employees and advised of serious problems in dealing with the acting general manager, and the president did absolutely nothing about it for a week, hoping it would go away. Well, it didn't, and it's not. I understand that the reason a special meeting was canceled the other day was not, as Mr. Herrick was quoted in the paper, as being kind to Mr. Trendick. If that was the case, why was the meeting left on the agenda for 4 or 5 days when Mr. Trendick said from the beginning he couldn't be there? There was something else behind that. I know what it is, but I don't think I need to put it out in public because I think it would hurt the community. I believe the latest episode of this was, I believe the latest episode of the secretness was the meeting and subsequent vote on the adult poll. That meeting did not meet the criteria we have used in the past for a closed meeting. We had plenty of open meetings where our attorney gave us advice in the open meeting. I believe the board didn't want the residents to hear that there might be other options other than immediately opening the pool to children, such as waiting for someone to file a formal complaint, which I don't believe has ever been done to this point. Then the attorney could look into possibly defending us against a complaint. But it was evident that Mr. Hill had it in his mind to do this from the beginning, and he wasn't going to let something small like the board get in his way. If the board used the attorney opinion as the reason for closing the meeting, then it should have been reopened for discussion and vote. I believe this vote was taken in an illegal closed meeting, therefore the vote was illegal and the result should be voided and the pool returned to adults only while the attorney researches it. Opening up to children while the attorney researches it, as was stated in the paper, is putting the cart before the horse. So now the board is trying to get rid of a board member and a committee member. And I don't believe for a minute that Mr. Trendick's situation not coming up in this meeting won't come up within the next 2 weeks. I just don't believe it. Their only sin has been to describe things going on that are hurting the community. This board majority wants to control the message, and anybody who deviates from that and doesn't toe the majority line is the enemy. What is this, Russia, China, the White House? What happened to the First Amendment freedom of speech? As far as a committee member goes, has the committee made a complaint about Mr. Miller? Did the committee have a majority vote to ask the board to remove this individual? I don't believe so. Did Mr. Miller say anything that was untrue that would damage the community? Mr. Miller is a valuable member of multiple committees and has been for years. He only cares about the community and not what is good for himself, like several members of this board seem to act. Mr. Miller has access to an attorney, his wife, and I'm hoping he uses it to protect his good name for being removed from a committee for doing nothing wrong. Just because you don't like being exposed for deceit and corruption doesn't mean you have the right to put the community in more jeopardy than it already is by the absence of the acting general manager and the inaction of the president and board majority. As for Mr. Trendick is concerned, we're not fans of each other. Anybody that was on the board last year when we exchanged emails knows that. But I applaud him and Ms. Jacobs and Ms. Supik for standing up for what they believe is happening with this board against the best interests of the community. What's right is right, and I'll defend anybody when I believe they're right. There is a process for removing director, and that was never done. Okay, you're supposed to file formal complaints and then have a hearing so that they can maybe have an attorney here to discuss those complaints. As far as Mr. Trendick, he's done nothing wrong. There's nothing in our bylaws that says things discussed in closed meetings cannot be put out in public. We tried that last year with a motion that anything discussed in closed session would stay between the board. That motion passed, but I voted against it as I knew it would be a total waste of time. Sure enough, a few days later, there were a couple pages in the monthly tabloid, The Progress, with all the information from the closed meeting, and it was revealed that all that info came from Mr. Stevens. That's exactly why I voted against it. Trendick has violated no bylaws. But the board did one thing I agree with. They finally figured out that the Landscapes Unlimited was incompetent, as me and as others said they were. When Landscapes asked to get out of their contract, the board agreed to buy them out. But of course, we still don't know have any idea how much we paid for them to go away because of more secrecy. But of course, before they left, they talked us into spending $340,000 needlessly on new carts, buying a tractor to cut our greens, which were known as the best in the area, and changing our membership structures to bundle amenities, which has us taking in less revenues, which seems to be our problem right now. Again, this whole debacle was spearheaded by Mr. Stevens and Mr. Clark as a way to take another shot at Bob Thompson, and the rest of us are left to pay for their fun.
Bill, I don't want to break your train of thought.
So do as you
You're over 5 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, so was other people.
Go ahead.
So was other people. So do as you must, but just know that there are some of us who don't like the corruption going on by this board. Don't think for a moment we won't make sure this fiber optic thing is done on the up and up, and we will find out about any quid pro quo by members of this board and any committees associated with it. I find it a disturbing conflict of interest that Mr. Hill and Parks would be involved in the process and have a vote in the process they controlled. Thank you.
I am Paula Gray, 88 Windjammer, Ocean Pines. I'm a year-round resident. I am aghast. I cannot believe that we would be threatened because we had a reaction to something. I don't believe, how much more secrecy? We cleared the room because we applaud. I'm really concerned about what I've seen since I moved here. It's scary because back here, we're going to pay for everything that happens. We're going to pay for all of it. We just heard that deep sigh about increases. Well, one of the things we have to worry about is that blessed pirate ship because the law requires that there be 6 foot from the edge of anywhere of that pirate ship to that metal fence. There's not. If anyone falls and hurts on that, we all donate to that. You'll be paying. God forbid we'll hurt a child. Start with that. But I am just really concerned about all of this secrecy, the hidden. I've been here and I watched the paper. We call it the driveway paper. You pick it up and you see who got kicked off this week because they had an opinion no one liked. All right, this is sad. It's really sad. I moved here because Ocean Pines, according to recent reports, was one of the 10 best places in America to live. And then I come in, and this is like 1984. Let's go see what they're going to let us know this week. That's sad. All right? But even sadder yet was what happened to me. For those of us who didn't, I left out the middle name. I am Paula Roberson Gray. I put my name on as an applicant to be considered for board membership for this election. Some of the reactions I got and some of the people that approached me with every kind of insult on the planet made me realize that I was not up to, even though I can be rather terse, I was not up to standing up to this kind of criticism when I'm not even there yet. Okay, what's going on? What is this? Why? And one thing everyone on the board needs to remember is don't clap or get kicked out. We are the Pines. We are the Pines. And Mr. Trent, if we elected you, if they're going to get rid of you, we need to know 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 why. Because we, the Pines, elected you. We might not agree with everything you do, but like he said, you didn't violate any rules. You did things they didn't like, but you didn't violate any rules. And since I have a reputation in my other world of being a little bit outspoken, I would have been dead meat at the beginning. I don't take an insult. Read Facebook. Read what people are saying about us now. It's sad. And people aren't going to buy houses here. Your property values are going to go down. They're on there talking about, let's go drive everybody out of here and let's do this. And by the way, I had a flatbread pizza the other day because I keep trying to go to Mumford's Landing. Don't. Okay? Don't. Wake up, board. We are the Pines. If you try to get rid of him, you are effectively getting rid of all of us. Unless you can prove he did something illegal, justify to these people out here why you're getting rid of their representative that they elected in a contested election. Okay.
Thanks, dear. Nice job. Good morning. My name is Jan Kastner, 133 Pinehurst. This is my first time here. This is quite nice. This is great. I'm a newbie here, so maybe some outside eyes looking in. I don't know. I just bought a place down here in September. Nice place. Nice place here. I'm going to make a request of the board, and I'll tell you why I feel I'm qualified to make that request. A little history of me. Again, I'm Jan Kastner. I wrote each of you an open letter. Probably didn't look at it. I got responses from 2 of you, and it's in regards to the yacht club and your food and services and so forth. It's not complaints. I own a real estate company in Pennsylvania, 46 agents. I work all over the state. Commercial real estate, I'm a retail specialist, work from Walmart to Outback to the mom and pop show. So I got an understanding of real estate. That's a nice facility, the yacht club. Nice. It's beautiful. Obviously, clearly, it's not being used well. I also own 2 restaurants. 2. Well, we just sold one 4 years ago, so down to 1. Caddyshack, look it up. Caddyshack, Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. Get on your little clicky things, look it up. It's exactly like the yacht club. The building's owned by a municipality. We pay them rent. They make money off the rent. We run the business. We have 55 employees. We've been there for 18 years. We average $250,000 a year profit. That's because we know how to run restaurants. So the request, and you all can come over if you want afterwards. I have a pool. well, 133 Pinehurst. The request is, please consider leasing out your food and beverages to an actual professional. I'd be happy to write the scope of work for you to let you make some sort of an RFP if you want. A triple net lease, percentage maybe on the backside. Two things will happen. A, you'll make money off your rent. The employees will become someone else's headache. The insurance, the taxes, the scheduling, all that will be gone. And the third thing, you won't have to talk about it anymore. Someone will actually be making money. You can get it off your agenda. Take my advice. I request you, please, this board should not be in the business of running a business. You don't know how. Let someone else do it. So thanks. Come on over. I'll be there.
Rosanna Nicoletis, 5 Widows Watch Court. I've a full-time resident since 2002. I would like to ask you to reconsider following through on the motion to remove Mr. Trennick, as you will be disenfranchising over 1,000 voters. I would also like to ask that the bylaws be revised to define the role of the AGM if one is needed in the future. We voted for Brett Hill for the board, not the general manager. The AGM position should have been a position as a placeholder overlooking operations. It is a conflict of interest to have Brett Hill acting as both for this long. So in addition, we already voted in this election, and now knowing all this information that's come forward, we would like to have the opportunity to amend our vote, and I think the election should be canceled and new ballots should be sent out. I also want to just state that I feel that the tenure as AGM has been a financial disaster for Ocean Pines, and that's all I have to say.
I'm Sharon O'Hare, 216 Mumford's Landing Road in Ocean Pines, and a former board member. So I've sat up here and I know how difficult your job is. I really do understand this. When I was sitting up there, if we had 10 people in the room, that was a lot, and I appreciated them being there. So instead of being intimidated by all the people, be thankful and don't be angry at us, Dave. We're here because we really, really care about this community. It's the best community in the whole area. And we want it to continue to be the best community, and that's why we're here. I didn't want to stand up here. I don't even want to attend another board meeting. I've done my share, but I feel I have to. You've been elected with a fiduciary responsibility to us, and we feel it's not happening. For example, the lady that brought up the situation with the pool. I am a pool user, a year-round pool membership, and the children are now allowed at the pool. Again, that was an issue I was up here for a couple weeks ago. That's the general manager's decision and the board's decision, okay, but the children should be made or encouraged to accommodate what's already there. There are no lap lanes now on the weekends, and we had a fight to get a lap lane during the week. We're there for health reasons and for safety reasons, and a lot of us swim laps because we need to. It's one of the few things that we can do at our age. So, there's no lap lanes. We can't do this anymore. Please bring back at least one lap lane 7 days a week. There is no reason for there not to be any. There aren't that many children in the pool, and there's no reason that we adults have to suffer because we don't have any place to have our exercise. I know we have different opinions. We all have different opinions in here. But Gary Miller is one of the most valuable people that we have in this community. I have served with him as a liaison to the Aquatics Committee for 2 years, and he was a member of that Aquatics Committee. You will not find a harder working person who really, really cares for this community than Gary Miller. And I think you're making a huge mistake if you vote to remove a committee member. It never came up in my term. It did come up renewing the membership of a committee member, and one was turned down. I personally witnessed that person who was applying for that committee, who personally threatened an employee. and that person did not get put on the committee. That would be a good reason. But because Gary Miller has different opinions than maybe some of you up here have, that is not a legitimate reason to remove him from a committee. It's been mentioned property values. Many of you know that's my business. I've been in real estate for almost 40 years here in Ocean Pines. Recently, I had another realtor, a competing company, send me an email. Sharon, I just had $1 million buyer for a home in Ocean Pines, and there aren't many of those. They were going to buy this home. They went online. They saw all this stuff that's going on, and they said, no more, show us West Ocean City. She came to me. She said, Sharon, what do? I says, write to the board. That's all you can do. But don't be deceived, people. This is going to affect your values. These amenities are why we buy in the Pines. We love the Pines, and that's important. So you've got to stop this bickering. You've got to stop it. In a few weeks, you're going to have a new board sitting here. This is an opportunity for all of you that are staying on the board. You have got to work together. You need new leadership. You have got to get somebody who's sitting at that head seat that can compromise and bring people together. For your benefit, for the new GM, God help him if he doesn't have somebody that can work with him and compromise. And for our benefit, because we deserve that. We want a functioning committee. Eric's own words just a few minutes ago were that we need to heal, unite, and move forward for the community. You are absolutely right, Tom. We need to do that. There's a saying, if you can't change the wind, change the direction. Please take this to heart. You've got to get together as a board, and you've got to heal this community. Thank you.
Christina Chris, 2305 Points Reach. Oh, I hate talking into a microphone. 2305 Points Reach, Christina Chris. And this is my first meeting too, so I'm like really scared. But I just wanted to say that all of this sounds and looks very familiar. Punishing a leaker instead of trying to solve the problems. I don't know, it said in the paper that you can't tell us why you want to remove an elected board member. But unless, again, it's something illegal, unless you stole money or assaulted someone, I can't imagine why you think you have the right to remove an elected official on the board without consulting with the rest of the residents of Ocean Pines.
I'm Sean Kotwicka, 24 Whitehorse Drive. I've lived in this community for about 2 years and 2 months. I'm a little bit in the restaurant business. He showed me up. I'm a little bit in the real estate business. She showed me up. They're both more successful than me. But I'm a man of honesty and truthfulness, and, being in that restaurant industry, you hear all the hearsay and whatnot, and it's the truth. But the one question I got to ask you this from the board is just a question to simplify that. One, he hit all my points, by the way, and don't let the property value go down because I want to make a living as well. But the one question on the end of this is, to form a petition in here in this community from the hearsay, how many signatures do you need on a petition here? Is there some consensus here? Is there a number drawn? How many signatures do you need on a petition to make a change from the people that speak their mind rather than just the board? Do you have an answer?
It's 500 if you want to know. It's in the bylaws.
I was just leaving it open for everybody else to hear.
Ted Maroney, 17 Clipper Court. I don't know whether Mr. Trendick did anything wrong or not. We haven't heard. We may not hear. I didn't vote for him. Anybody that read the form, I was probably in the top 3 beating him up on there on going onto the board. But I don't like the idea that we're getting ready to throw somebody off the board for violations where the fiduciary responsibility of a board was also for illegal taping and other things going on. So what bothers me more is the optics of this, that it does not appear to be an even, fair thing across. And the idea that the board did not watch this tape, All you have to do is go to basic law. You inform one person on the board, you've informed them all. And the thing you have to be careful of is that, and I know we've only got 30 days or maybe an hour here, depending on how the motion goes, but the thing you have to be worried about is if you have a continuation, you subject the association to punitive damages, which are not covered by any insurance because you knew about it, all right? So that is what bothers me. The bigger issue here is conflict of interest and information. Are you getting all the information? Was the board told, does everybody in here sign a conflict of interest thing? And for instance, is anybody in here running a business, those that are still working, that uses the same attorney or uses the same auditor? Was that all disclosed up front? Was it disclosed that we bought $30,000 worth of materials for Mankin Meadows last year, and then we went ahead and bought all new stuff? I love it. My 4-year-old granddaughter loves that park, okay? It's done well. But information needs to go to the board to make good decisions. The last thing I would say is this. This is a lame duck board. Doug Parks was an appointed member. Dave is rotating off. I don't know if Tom plans on serving another year. But this reminds me very much of the time when we got rid of Tom Olson, where we had a lame duck. And Dave, you're smiling because you were one of the people that was most upset about that and how it was done. I would suggest if the case is to be made, if Mr. Trendick did improperly violate whatever rule that's not defined that's out here, that you let the next board be seated where every single member will have been elected by the people that are sitting in this room and the rest in this room, present the evidence to them, they're smart people, and let them make the decision and take some of the politics out of it. Thank you.
I'm a Olaf Ostveen, 12th floor guy, and I want to ask you people, I speak with a heavy accent, don't interfere with me, really upset me. Okay, you know. The first thing I want to say to Tom, you did a very good job. We have a good board. There's a lot written in the paper about the board. Some people have done a lot of damage writing letters in the paper about this board. Every one of you people are like us a person. I disagree with your policy. We come here to the time with Mr. Slowadick. Mr. Slowadick is just a person like me. We came to America many, many years ago. We was very successful in America, and I'm very thankful for this country. Mr. Slowadick comes out of part of Europe, was very dominated by the communists. And I want to go a little bit back in the history. We lived it under dictatorship. You cannot live under dictatorship. You cannot speak your mind, or they cut your head off, or they put a bullet in your head. We know what freedom means to us. We don't take that word for granted. We appreciate that. So Mr. Slowadick, sure, has a few things wrong. He went and asked people what was wrong. That sits in our system. We are European. I don't feel nothing wrong with it, even if it was against the board. Thanks to Mr. Slowadick is a good guy, but it's like I say, it is up to you people to make that decision if you want to remove him. But I say, if you remove Mr. Slowadick, we have to remove Mrs. Jacobs too. Mrs. Jacobs has done the same thing. That's my opinion. Right? Now, we have an election. This week was a story in the paper, and it was me, the person, who made that statement to one of the people who run for board. I was not here last Saturday. I had approached that lady in a very pleasant way in the restaurant. She made over here a statement that I was crude to her. This lady has done more problems to this board when she's running for the board. She wrote letters, very, very bad. She have cut you people down. And we don't need a Dr. Phil here in the board. If she wants to be a Dr. Phil, she better get a contract with the TV. I don't want that lady in the board. I told her that. All right? And I'm honest. You are good people. It's like say Mrs. Jacobs is a good lady, but if you get Mr. Slovovic out, get her out too. She has done the same thing. Don't make any difference. But I stand on it. We don't need a Dr. Phil in the board.
Richard Clemens, 61 White Sail Circle. I have a question to the board, okay? Does the president, chairman, vote on every issue, or is he the tiebreaker?
The answer is by tradition and by as long, I've been on the board 9 years. And
I
the president
understand.
has voted on every issue
I
that has
understand
ever
you've
come
worn
up.
many hats, you've served on many committees, and you've done a great job. But for our day-to-day business, this board on TV, in person, okay, has been dysfunctional when it comes to voting. Okay, the job of the person that chairs the meeting is the tiebreaker. Okay? We value your opinion, but when it comes time to vote, the people that vote are the board members, and the chairman breaks the tie. Okay? I mean, is that not Robert's Rules of Order? Oh,
I mean, what I tried to do is give you an answer to your question, and I think I did. And in Oceanside, the president, I know that that is the case in some places, but it is not the case here, and it hasn't been for as long as I've been here.
That's the rules everywhere.
Pardon?
I didn't say that.
I said that's the rules everywhere. Standard operating procedures. Robert's Rules of Order, the president doesn't vote unless it's.
Our bylaws say that Robert's Rules of Order shall be applied as they may apply from time to time. So,
Okay.
I'm telling you the answer.
Okay, the parliamentarian for the Pines needs to research, okay, your foundation for making decisions. Part of the problem that we have today and have had in the past has been because of the way that is voting done, okay? I rest my case. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. My name's Deb Fisher. I live at 148 Ocean Parkway. I don't have any prepared notes. I was just taking notes as I was talking. We've talked about many important things here today, but let's get back to the pool. I'm a kindergarten teacher. I've lived here for 8 years. I go to the pool every day. I know that it's a law, but there's also the rights of the people who swim for healthy therapeutic reasons. We need to find a balance so everyone can be happy, the children with families and the seniors who swim every day. I've been taking notes about incidents at the pool, and we've had a couple of problems with safety and children being unattended, alcohol, children sitting at the bar. The law might say that the pool needs to be open to all families, but there's a law that also says we have rights as Americans with disabilities. A lot of people who have swim memberships have asked for their swim membership $190 refund, and they were told, no, it's only temporary. So, can't go through all of my notes, things I've observed at the pool, but ball throwing, diving, throwing, people being hit, there are some safety issues. I agree with the teacher, Becky, who was here earlier. We'd love to have some rules that are posted and enforced. One big concern have been the children who are unattended when their parents are sitting at the bar drinking. And just on Wednesday, a mother changed a diaper, dipped it in the pool, and put it back on the kid. So we've been seeing a lot of safety concerns. We would like to have some balance with the hours, balance with lap swimming, balance with adult time, and ask for rules and safety to be addressed. Thank you.
How does this come off? Thank you. When this board started, I was very pleased with the work that y'all did as a group.
little by little, after a few months, things changed.
Excuse me, you have to give your name and address,
I'm
please,
sorry.
first.
Joan Watt, 11 Surf Place, Ocean Pines, Maryland. I find it's very divisive among you all. I find when Tom, which I voted for you, when you stepped down as president, you only thanked 2 other board members during your term. Instead of not being divisive, you could have thanked everybody because this board's been going on for a whole year and you just stepped down as being president. So I think that does not help to ensure compatibility when you only thank 2 other board members. When we talk about removing somebody, most people in this room will say it should be something they did illegal. And of course, according to articles written, it appears that y'all can't tell us what Trendick did, yet we all know Brett illegally used verbal recordings, and he's in the IT profession, so did he not know that was illegal? But you all know it was illegal, so why was he not then immediately removed for something definitely illegal in Maryland law? In terms of anybody talking about what may have gone on in meetings, I think if you would not have had so many secretive meetings that may not have been according to the Homeowners Association, there would have not have been the reason for anybody to discuss what was going on, or even for us to wonder. I think there was some back room talking. The fact that when you stepped down for president, immediately Mr. Stevens knew what he must do at this meeting, so you've already talked about behind closed doors who would fill in for you prior to the vote. A couple times when you were talking about the votes, nobody looked over at Pat, who had her hand up 2 or 3 times prior to a motion and was never called on. So I really think that this board, thank goodness, you only have a few more weeks, because I don't think any of us can go through this months. Keep the board, keep the people on the board we elected. Tom, you shouldn't have stepped down for just 2 weeks and then caused more confusion. And I really believe that Brett has caused a lot of it, but he can't take the full blame because he was acting. He was unqualified. So y'all should have monitored him more closely. But if anybody did anything illegal, recording people with their voices from an IT person should have known that was illegal. I can't put that in. Okay.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name's George Simon. I live at 742 Ocean Parkway. I don't even know where to start. This is poor. Our community was coming off the best year we've had on record. And this board takes control, and we have a massive deficit. How does this happen? You all have accountability here. I had a talk with you, Brett. I ran for the board last year, and I did not make it. I ran in support of the previous board that was here. I think they did a fine job, as the numbers do respect. But what has happened here, all the changes in personnel, good people that have been here for a long time that are gone. We have the best wedding facility probably on the shore, and she's gone. Why? Why has all this happened? And now, because 2 people on the board disagree with what you are doing, they're trying to be forced out? This is wrong. They're the voice of the people. Something has to change. And everybody, whenever you go to vote, this next election it's going to be the same. You need to make sure of who you vote on, make sure of what they stand for, and move this community in the right direction. Ocean Pines is one of the best places you can live. It's going downhill, and it's your responsibility. Thank you.
How's that? I'm Les Purcell. I live at 55 Tail of the Fox Drive for the last almost 20 years. I'm not going to get back into a lot of things you've already heard a lot of, but I just want to caution you. I heard, and this may not even come up, but I want to take this opportunity to let you know, if in fact you vote on accepting or doing anything about members to the clubs committee, which I am still the chairman, be sure that there is an active application with my signature, because I haven't signed any applications lately that I know of. So I will come back to you if that's the case. And I just want to let you know that I may not get the opportunity to talk later. Thank you.
Is it on? How about now? My name's Betty Wildgust. I live on 24 Water Green Lane. And I just want to, as an advanced practice nurse, I want to tell you this is on life support right now. It's almost beyond CPR. And after listening to all of these comments today, I would really like all of you now to give us your thoughts on what you're going to do to improve the situation. Thank you.
I always have trouble no matter what. Hello, is that better? I'm Anna Foltz. I live in Ocean Pines, 127 High Sheriff. What I saw today is, and I've been here for almost 35 years,
It's on.
Hold it up close.
hello? What I want to say is, I love this Ocean Pines. I say it all the time in my column. And I want to thank the board for giving us the opportunity to say what we think. And I hope they listen. And the other thing is, I will always feel safe since we have people who speak for what they want. And with that, we can't go wrong. And I thank you for speaking up. I love Ocean Pines, and the board will do a great job, I'm sure, after this. Amen.
I know I've spoken already, but one thing was mentioned by the board that I wasn't aware of, and that was how to get rid of someone off the board or a committee. And there were two ways. One was they did something wrong and criminal, or they don't like them. They don't need a reason. I think the board should reevaluate, or someone should bring that up as a possibility for change. This idea of anything because we don't like them doesn't work.
My name is Slobodan Trendik. "20 Drawbridge. I feel compelled to address the membership. The only thing I'm guilty of is protecting the membership and the employees. I thought I was doing the right thing. And if the membership thinks I did wrong, I'll be happy to walk away. But those were motivations that I had all this time. And it wasn't easy. It got rough at times, but that's what we signed up for when we run for public office. We get called the politicians, although I don't see myself as a politician. I see myself as a retired businessman. And when I was campaigning, I always said that being a director wasn't on my bucket list. But rest assured, everything I try to do and will continue to do is to take actions that are in the best interest of the association and the employees. And the reason I brought my motion forward today is because we got another 6 weeks that we would have to deal with the acting general manager's management style. And frankly, a lot of people are not looking forward to that. And I'm disappointed that the majority of the board, yet again, refused to take actions that I have tried to take now for almost 3 months. My actions were not intended to be personal in nature, but purely business. As an elected director to help govern this community. I believe what I was trying to do was the right thing to do. If you fast forward to today, it only got worse from 3 months ago. And it's going to get worse unless this board realizes that we no longer have a choice but to act. Otherwise, it is a pure display of gross negligence. But I want to thank everybody for coming, and I hope the next board in 2 weeks will draw this much crowd again, and that you will look forward to being more active in a day-to-day operations of this community and be more active and engaged with the future boards, because this is our community after all.
Mr. President. Wait a minute, Mr. President. He made a comment to a second comment. When I spoke, I got a little bit nervous. I mentioned the bad letters, what was written in the paper about the particular person who's running for the board. I asked her, why did she never came to the board meeting? She never was on the board meeting. She never has complained. She said, well, I watch the TV. I told her, come to the board.
Dutch, you're out of order.
Wait a minute.
You've already, no, Dutch,
Wait a minute.
you have had your time.
Well,
You are out of
You spoke
order.
the second time,
And the
too.
person you're talking about is right behind you, I think. I
Yeah,
don't know.
so let her come. She never was here on the board, never complained. I told her, come and complain. No, she don't have the guts, but she wrote bad letters about you people.
Dutch.
And I don't care what she say about
You're
me.
right. I'm
All
saying
right,
you,
I listen
I'm
to
telling you, you're out of order.
So, be honest. I listen to me. But she's not right. If she wants to be...
Dutch, you're still out of order. Dutch, stop talking. And the rest of you be quiet. All right. Colette.
Is this on?
No.
Is it on now? Okay.
Yeah, better.
I'm Colette Horn, 35 Sundial Circle. Mr. Dutch is right, I haven't been here at a lot of meetings, but I have followed the goings-on of the board, and I am a candidate because I care about our community. I am intimidated and rattled by Mr. Dutch continuing to attack me, but I will not be silenced, and I will do all that I can, if elected, to better this community. Thank you.
My name is Dave Vollrath. I live at 935 Yacht Club Drive. I'm going to respect your wishes and not repeat things you've already heard. But I do want to comment on two things. I think any decision to change the membership of this board 2 weeks prior to an election is a bad decision. It has all the appearances of trying to gerrymander the membership or stack the deck before people have a chance to vote for who they want to sit on this board. It doesn't matter why you're removing them at this point, in my opinion, or who the people are. This should be deferred. Any discussion of this should be deferred till after the elections have been decided. Secondly, I'm concerned about the absence of Mr. Parks today. Are you going to, if you vote on this today, don't you need a 2/3 majority? It's not on the agenda now, is that correct? Okay, I just want to make sure that's what you agreed to do. But I think this needs to be put off regardless. The second thing I would say, you've had a lot of debates about equal access to your pools and equity. Those are very different things. They're not, I mean, the courts have proven long ago that equal does not mean equal in the way of absolutes. It talks of equal in terms of equal access. Equal access to education guarantees you an education, but doesn't guarantee you attendance at a particular school. Equal access to health care guarantees you health care, but not a particular hospital. Equal access to swimming guarantees you swimming, but not a particular pool. You need to get, your legal advice may not be as comprehensively accurate as you might think. You could simply combine the Mumford's pool and the Oasis pool into a single complex and define each pool and how it's used, a bubbler, a family, and a tranquility pool, and you are no longer discriminating by age. You're discriminating by use. This is allowable under the law, and it solves a problem of 316 feet. I can't imagine how we got to this point when you stand out front and you say, I can go 300 feet this way or 300 feet that way. This is the stupidest argument I've ever seen. It makes no sense. You need to work with your attorneys to find out what is the right solution that will get you the outcome that your community wants. And if you can't, you need to find different attorneys.
Come on, there has to be somebody else. Can we get one more? Just one more. There being no more public comments, I'll close public comments. And what do we got next? Here it is. I knew I had one.
The
Capital purchase request.
My first request is asking the board to approve a emergency design build contract with Willow Construction for the second floor of the golf clubhouse. We were notified last week by the fire marshal that we had violated the terms of our demolition permit that our in-house staff was performing, and that they exceeded the scope of the permit, and the building is no longer under fire protection. That implemented a mandatory fire watch program for all hours of operation of the building. That's carrying a cost to us of $500 per day, and a failure to adhere to that policy is fines of $1,000 a day. At this point, we are unable to obtain permits for actual construction on our own. And given that this project is now in its 5th month with virtually no activity outside of demolition that has caused us violations with the county, I'm asking for a emergency design build with Willow. Willow is the contractor that we bid through. They went through a competitive RFP in January on the Beach Club facility. They came in under budget on the Beach Club, as well as ahead of schedule as far as time. They have agreed that they could have the building complete within a 90-day window. The budget that they have put forth in this, and this would be using the same units as the Beach Club, so we would be adhering to our existing contract and competitive procurement, is $536,500. The budget for the building that we approved in this fiscal year budget was $417,000. However, we have approximately $60,000 in carryover from the HVAC budget from last year for the building. So we're over budget by less than 10% when you take the HVAC along with the renovations for this year that's still open.
Is this for discussion at this point, or are you asking for a vote?
Well, someone needs to, I would assume, second it to bring it into any further discussion for a vote.
I'll second it for discussion.
All right, so we have the motion to approve the, how much was it?
536, 500.
536 to Willow Construction. For the new, for the construction of the upstairs of the country club. It's an emergency measure, brought about by the notification from the fire marshal. So now we're in discussion. Cheryl?
Early this morning, I saw your email about this, so this is obviously something that's just been brought to our attention. I see, however, that in the paragraph, next to the last full paragraph, that the figure provided, which you've quoted and is in this document of $536,500, is strictly a preliminary budget and is subject to change due to final design and engineering, final selection of materials, construction methods, and commencement. So I'm not at all comfortable that this is going to be the final number. We've already deviated over $100,000 from what we thought it was going to be. And while I am still in favor, certainly, of going forward and completing this project, it is just turning out to be just what I thought it could very well be, and that is, once you start tearing the walls apart, you're doing other things, it's going to cost more than what we thought it would. But I'm definitely in favor of moving forward on it because it's the right thing to do.
This is not a not to exceed. It's, no, my
That's what they put as,
thing's not working.
that's what they put as a budget. If that's what we approve, then that would be to build into the contract with them. And this, I mean, this has come about in the last 4 days. They came in on Monday, and this came out last night late, which is why I got it this morning to the board. It's, I mean, we're just in a bad position as we're 5 months into a project, and we're really just at the beginning. And because of the situation with the fire marshal, any delays are further going to add to the cost of the project, whether we continue on the path that we were going and wait for drawings to come out for internal resources to do it, or just move it to a design build firm. Given that we don't have another official board meeting for at least a month, I felt it was prudent to at least bring the discussion if the board wants to continue. And I mean, we're paying that $500 a day in overtime for staff to be in there 7 days a week. That's fine, but it's my duty to make everyone aware and at least bring the discussion.
I agree with Cheryl that we're in here and we need to keep moving on this. I guess the dollar amount is high. Is there any room for going back and some negotiation? Have we used this firm? Is this the firm we're using?
Willow Construction is who completed the renovations at the Beach Club. They started work in the first week of March, and they finished the first week of May at the Beach Club. This was bid competitively through DBF for that contract back in January. We had over half a dozen vendors that were visited that bid, and we received more than the 3 required proposals. So the basis of going back to them was their reputation in this recently completed project, as well as we have the billing units that they agreed to tie to back from their original proposal that was already competitively bid.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My take on the situation, given that this was just brought to us at the last minute, is I would like to request that the motion be tabled and each director has time to reevaluate past information, how we got to where we are today, and then decide if acting GM's recommendation is really the way forward or not. So I request that the motion be tabled.
If we go that route, what would be the implication time-wise? I'm just,
Stops all discussion.
pardon? Oh,
It's the parliamentary. Yeah, I believe the request table does.
I believe the request to table does have to be seconded. Is there a second to that? Let me say that if we table it, we're putting it off to some indefinite time for no definite reason, as far as I can tell. Would that not be true?
I'm uncomfortable to vote based on the fact that this was just brought to our attention. Like Director Jacobs indicated, I read this morning at 5 o'clock. And I really haven't had a time to review past information to see previous competitive bids and why we are where we are with the county, whether there is any opportunity to sit down with the county and find a compromise with the situation. I understand the regular meeting hasn't been scheduled. The new board will be formed in 2 weeks. But I certainly can review this myself in the next couple of days, and then if need be, we can call a special meeting, or we can do via email if everybody unanimously agrees to cast the vote electronically. But if this motion stays on the table the way it is, I will vote against it just because I don't believe it's fiscally responsible, and also we haven't been given the time to digest the information.
Literally, the motion to table is used when we expect this motion to be brought up later in the same meeting. We can move to postpone, in which case we ought to identify at least, some time frame in which it's going to be postponed to. Do you have a suggestion as to how long it would take you to review the information and feel comfortable? And let me ask just the board in general, does anybody object to, once having reviewed all the information, having a up and down electronic vote on the motion?
Point of order, I believe you need to determine whether or not there is a consensus to table this first.
I'm not even sure that's true. Let me ask the question, though, since Cheryl has brought it up. Is there a consensus to table the motion?
Ask for a vote.
That?
Ask for a vote.
Okay. Yeah, I mean.
Does
Would you please
everybody?
just call the question, ask for a vote on whether we
Thank
should
you, ma'am.
table it. Well,
Go ahead.
Can I interject before the vote?
Pardon?
Can I add to a discussion before the vote?
I think, well, the question on the table is whether or not to table the motion, not the original motion.
Well, can I
Yeah.
weigh in why I'm against table?
You can discuss tabling it, yes.
I have concerns about tabling the motion only because it's an emergency situation that we're being put in through with the problems that recently arose at that building. We were actually supposed to, we thought that the timeline, we would have this meeting in that building as a board meeting. And this has been put off for months. It was supposed to start in February to go ahead with this and be ready by now. If we put this off for another 2 months, Until a new board comes in, then they have to refamiliarize themselves with everything that's transpired. We agreed on the project. We're in an emergency situation. It's not that much of a difference from the numbers that are being shown to us. We can get it done within a couple months. And more importantly, that building could be utilized this winter for food and beverage as well. And it may be give us an option to move some of the business from the Cove and save money in the wintertime. So I'm really against tabling it. I think the costs are not that severe. We're incurring costs on a daily basis now if we wait. I'm against tabling it, and I think we should take the vote.
I personally would prefer not to table it, although I understand Slobodan's point. I think it's a question of how much time we're talking about in my mind. We want to get this thing moving. It is unfortunately well behind. And the opportunity it affords if we do get it moving could be significant. As Tom mentioned, if we have that facility available, it opens up other options with respect to food and beverage during the wintertime. Whatever may happen will happen, but at least it provides more of an option. And it will cost us money for every day that we wait. Maybe that's not significant, really, in terms of the total price.
Dave, I'm lost in the process of tabling. That's certainly not my expertise. So I just want to clarify something in my mind. The idea of going back and taking the time to look at this and setting a time for, okay, the board's going to vote on it in a couple days or something like that. I cannot support waiting until the next meeting, knowing that we have fire issues. But I don't know how that works with tabling the motion. So help me out here.
I can help you out. I mean, my recollection is coming back now. I mean, I went through this in detail in an earlier occurrence of tabling. And basically, tabling is used to defer a question until later in the meeting. So you may say, well, I'm not ready to discuss this right now, but I will, after we finish this other business. But there is another motion to postpone, and which can be used in its place, which sets a future time to consider the question. And
If I may, if the recommendation to table the motion is voted against, then we certainly can vote to postpone the motion. The issue is that the numbers that acting GM mentioned earlier, we're talking about almost 30% difference. Postponing the motion for a couple of days, few days, just for us to review the historical data and to be comfortable with the individual votes. I don't think that's too much to ask. And especially if if everybody agrees to cast the vote electronically, it further expedites the process. So we are talking about a few days. We are really not talking about after the elections, but sometime during this week, as soon as everybody has time to review everything and feel comfortable with the vote.
Cheryl, sorry. Just poke me.
I'm going to need, if we're proceeding in that manner, I'm going to need to know from Mr. Hill how much it's costing us on a daily basis to postpone and weigh that against the new cost that's been given to us, as well as the possibility that we could be shut down entirely if we don't act within a certain period of time. So I would need that additional information.
I did state earlier, but I know I said a lot in there, that it's costing us approximately $500 per day now in overtime on our public works staff to sit in the building. The staff has to perform a complete inspection of the building every half an hour. And if the risk in that is if there's a deficiency in the logs for whatever reason, the fire marshal has the right to close the building down until the situation is rectified. A new fire alarm system and sprinkler system is installed. The fire marshal was gracious enough, and this is the second violation on this building. If you remember back in June, the Turns Grill was shut down for a couple of days because we lost our occupancy certificate because we violated our permits with the fire marshal. At that point, we failed to provide drawings and documentation for the work that was done on the first floor, and we were shut down. So this is now the second problem with the building. When the fire marshal called me, it was not a pleasant phone call, and he had stated that, he was well within his rights to close us down. The county wants to work with us. They're trying to be a partner with us, and they said out of, respect for who we are and giving us the benefit of the doubt that, even though it's been done once in the building and we were given warnings, they'll call it a mistake again, but they'll go with the fire watch, and that was mandatory. And if there's any discrepancies in it, we will be shut down.
Does that include the Turn Grill being shut down as well?
That's the whole building.
Okay, got it.
I don't know. I feel it's unfortunate we're in this position, but we are. And we have a good solution in front of us. I mean, at least in terms of a reputable contractor. And the cost is, it's higher than we budgeted. But on the other hand,
It's 10% difference. It's not 30, as Director Trendick stated.
10%.
We had 417,000 in the direct building budget, but there's still a budget from last year because we budgeted almost $125,000 in HVAC equipment. This number from Willow includes the HVAC for the second floor, which was not completed in the budget from last year. So that money was allocated, and that's still there and would be part of this project. So it's approximately $475,000 in available budget dollars across the HVAC budget and the building budget, and we're at 536, so we're over by about 60,000.
is Willow able to, when are they able, I'm sorry, Pat, I stepped on it.
I was just going to comment that with what Cheryl said about the risk associated. I mean, in addition to the dollars, I think there is a certain risk for the fire marshal issue. Plus, are those public works men now being pulled off other jobs? I mean, there seems to be a lot of moving parts here.
I was going to ask whether the fire marshal is fully apprised of the path that you're going to take with Willow and is accepting that.
Well, we're on fire watch until we have another path where the system's remedied and automated again. Willow's aware of the situation with the fire marshal, and that would be from when we would commence contract with them, which at this pace would be, as soon as Monday, should the board be approving, Willow would be accepting the responsibility and bringing that to closure for us.
Well, and when you say accepting the responsibility, they'll basically be doing the fire watch for us. And
That would be part of the construction, because the fire watch,
Okay.
if it was structured
All right.
accordingly, they would have taken out the old system, and while the system was out, would have had a pre-scheduled fire watch with the fire marshal, and then brought it right back into service. So it would be a small transition, as opposed to where we demoed it. It's been this way for an extended period of time, and we don't really have the answer. The answer right now would be, we'd be buying a new fire suppression system, and that would then be torn out again when we actually get to putting the walls up, to tuck it in behind the walls and move it to a permanent status.
Well, I think the key thing is that once we contract Willow, they're responsible. Cheryl?
Are we, excuse me, are we in this position with another contractor that we've been using, or because we're doing it on our own with Public Works that we've found ourselves in this position? And secondly, would it be acceptable or amenable to everyone, since this is a number, but they clearly say it's not a firm number, that we could tack on a percentage and give them the go-ahead, but if once they do their final drawing or whatever, it's going to dictate a better number, that would be the trigger that comes back to the board. So, for example, if we said, okay, go ahead, But if it exceeds 15%, 20%, whatever the right number is, they've got to come back to us, and then we as a board make a decision.
Normally, if this was a bid contract like we had done on the other bids at the time, I would agree with you, Cheryl. However, in this situation, because we're starting with a budget and then they're finalizing a number, I would be hesitant to vote on that because this is public, and then we're basically publicly telling Willow we would pay $600,000 or $650,000, whatever that extra would be, and I think that puts us in a position of liability. They've given us a number that's over the budget, and if they put that number out there, I believe it's now up to our staff and Willow to work to make that number happen, and they better have a good reason and documentation for going over it, which can come back to the board. And if we're agreeing to move forward with the project, then it's the decision of, do we buy that premium floor that would go over the budget or stick with the baseline floor that was included in it? They've had the time and the drawings. They've been in the process they looked at that building about 3 months ago with our staff early on and actually bid just to do the drawing work for it. Dave was in the meeting with Kevin Layfield and I when Kevin recommended a different option for engineering, which we're still waiting on drawings for. So we didn't select them in that initial bid, but they had reviewed it, and I think, I would say it's, my responsibility or whoever precedes me, as well as, Kevin's staff, to hold to that budget, and I think we should hold them to it.
Mr. Chairman, my take on this, and I'll repeat what Director Jacobs said earlier. We've been presented with a letter from a contractor that clearly states it's a preliminary estimate. So the $536K that was quoted to us, the board, is a moving target, and we have no idea what they will come back with. Once they have additional information, that whole number can change in a substantial way. For that reason alone, I just feel asking the board to vote based on this letter is really not a good way to award this work. So I feel very uncomfortable voting in this for this motion, and I will not under the existing circumstances.
Are they willing to sign a contract with that number in it and have penalties if they don't meet it?
Well, and I think where it comes from is that there's not a clear scope because it's a design build. We need to have the finalized engineering of how many electrical outlets are going in, what type of flooring is going to be there, what are the wall surfaces, and we haven't defined, the parameters aren't defined for how it's being finished. So that's, they're taking mean standards for the construction to create that budget, and it is a design build. We don't have engineering to give them, to tell them what exactly they're building, and that's part of the process. So it's a budget on the means, and we have to work off the units we have for the beach club, which is where we got to it. And our struggle right now and why we can't move it forward with anyone else is because we don't have drawings to define for anyone to bid a final scope on it.
I think your answer, what you just said settles it for me then. I can't vote for this, but what I do need then is for you to tell me when we will be in a position to have that information for them to then be able to give us a firm number.
We were supposed to be in that position May 1st, and it's been 3 months of waiting and excuses on drawings, contractors, and this is dragged on to now. Not only do we not have progress moving forward, but the work that we did caused damage to us, and that's why we're in this boat, and that's why I brought this solution up, because the way we're doing it now is not working, and I don't have another way to fix it.
Can we approve going ahead with, based on final approval after the final numbers are in?
They would probably be 2 weeks on being able to provide us but they would have costs expended in there, and them bringing the engineering and the design portion of the design build to closure.
So we would be incurring costs to get to the next step, but I don't know that there's an alternative to that. I don't think there is. You know, in the interest of moving forward, not approving the 536 number, I think we have to approve whatever is needed to get to that next step. Otherwise, the building is just sitting there.
So I guess to quantify the scope of an approval, so we have some path to move forward, if we can approve to move forward with Willow on a not-to-exceed budget with the award today would be for the design, and if they do not bring back a design for the build that meets the budget, that we would pay them for the design services and then move it out to bid, but at least we get it on a path to move forward.
You know, what I don't understand, Mr. Chairman, you know, Active GM said that this project has been going on for months. And now we're talking about the scope hasn't been defined. We don't know where the electrical outlets are going. The design build is yet to be put together. I don't understand how can demoing of the building start without having done preliminary project scope, definition, and everything in place. So I don't know, the more I'm hearing his comments about the issue, the more uncomfortable I am about voting. It sounds like this project really wasn't properly planned. So I just don't, I really don't understand it.
If I can, I think I finally understand it. I think what Pat suggests is probably our only way of moving forward right now. I mean, basically, to go forward with the first phase, I'll call it, up for a design, which we require before we can find out what the final cost will be. And can we put a budget number, or can we put a number on that design, or do we need a proposal?
I put 15,000 on it.
15,000?
Yep,
Not to exceed?
correct.
And I believe we did approve conceptually what we wanted that floor to be. Am I on the right floor?
Correct. We did, back
The
in
board.
December, we went through the drawings and through the budget. We approved conceptually what we were doing. We have had drawings on a general floor plan, but when it comes into mechanicals and your plumbing, electrical, HVAC systems, that has not been engineered, and that process has been delayed. And those are key elements to the scope of, I mean, we know a couple walls have to go up, and you know, we know what's going on the outside of the building, our ADA compliance, but there's a lot of pieces that are missing, and somewhere that needs to get moving forward.
Does the drawings, which we will get as part of the design, does that encompass the bathrooms and the kitchen?
Yes. It's the whole second floor that we were getting drawings
Yeah,
on.
does it include, you know, will the final bid, after the design drawings are completed, include kitchen equipment? And in there, its installation?
The kitchen equipment was not included, but everything else was. So that's all three bathrooms, bringing the bathrooms to ADA compliance, all the main space, including the bar and the bar plumbing. The kitchen equipment is not included.
It is conceivable then that if we go ahead with the design, or get the design drawings, that the cost could actually come in under the budget that we just talked about.
That is conceivable as well. I would say if the big question now, I mean, we've already been in a phase of trying to get drawings on something. If we want to be able to essentially pass on this fire liability, that's where the design build and moving forward with some contractor approval comes into the equation. Because if we get a design and then we're not really giving them any ability to move forward, or we're putting them in a holding pattern throughout this entire process, we're still going to be incurring the $500 a day, and the liability is going to be on us if somebody screws up. You know, if somebody's not in there, it's back on us. And the fire marshal was very clear. He wanted to see a licensed contractor with permits from the licensed contractor to move forward on any activities to remedy this.
Yeah, well, does the fire marshal, would the fire marshal accept our moving forward? There has to be a design phase first. You were telling us that. So that is.
Well, it's whether it's on our staff and our responsibility, or we are able to turn it over to a contractor.
Well, you're confusing me now. Well, I think moving forward, are we not? We're talking about moving forward with Willow to do a design phase first, and then to come back with hard numbers on the costs for the bill.
Dave?
Am I
Well,
missing something?
that's where I was coming in with putting a budget on the build portion so that there's a commitment to Willow. So Willow will make the commitment to us to take that liability off of our hands. If we're just telling them to do the design work, and then we're going to come back and reevaluate the build portion, they're not going to be in the position to take over that liability from us. And in the process, we are still going to be liable until we commit to them actually getting the work done, because it's going to be back in our court then on their ability to actually get that work done and bring it back into compliance.
So we don't know at this point in time how long the design work will take.
Can I?
So I'm sorry, Cheryl, I hate this board. Just hit me.
If we can have the drawings quickly, then I think we could agree as a board electronically to give the go-ahead. So can you commit to what's today? Friday. Is today Friday? Can you commit to us that by the end of next week, for example, we can have the drawings from them, and we will agree electronically to give the go-ahead? That'll put us in a better position. Can we get that kind of an agreement?
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
You okay with that? Good, let's go.
Okay, can we?
Let's go. Yay, yay.
Can we get the official 6 hands so that we don't have to do a separate email consent? Yeah. All right, done, let's move on.
Okay, good.
I'm going to tell Willow to get us the drawings yesterday, and we'll pay them for the drawings, and they'll have a firm price then by next Friday.
No later than Friday. We'll take it earlier.
Well, yeah, as soon as
Okay.
possible to move it forward.
It doesn't include the kitchen, which is a surprise to me. I thought it included.
No, Anna.
No.
It doesn't include the elevator. No.
We need to consider it, it's very important. We're gonna use that room all the time. We need to have a new elevator.
Okay, the bulkhead program, the board never officially made an award. That kind of slipped with the transition from Jerry Avetta to Kevin Layfield. So, there's too many slides in this package. I'm making a motion to request an award to High Tide Marine Construction for a I'm going to ask for the next 3 years just because it took us this long to get to this position. The High Tide was the low bid in the RFP that was conducted by DBF. And they were the low bidder, with Mertec Marine being second, Fisher Marine being third, McGinnity fourth, and Rehax is fifth. High Tide carries contracts with both the state of Maryland and Ocean City. They're a local company of the area, and being the low bid on the work requested, I think it's in our best interest to move forward and engage them in a contract so we can get the bulkhead program moving forward as quickly as possible.
Second.
Discussion?
I just have a question. I can't remember the name of the person now that, in Public Works, that I think has a lot of bulkhead experience. Is he?
Kevin Layfield.
Yeah, that's right.
Kevin was tweaking some of the engineering behind what DBF did, but in concept, I mean, we bid twice to contractors for construction. The first was to carry the existing wood, at which point High Tide came in lower than Fisher Marine. They've been working the emergency repair contracts for the last year. DBF put this bid out with a vinyl product, and for the base bid, and that's for a 6-foot bulkhead. High Tide was at $226.79 per foot. That's $1.79 more than what we were paying Fisher for wood bulkheading in the past. There might be some minor adjustments to the bulkhead structure and project, but that would carry across all vendors, and that's related to what Kevin's found through the permitting process. But at this point, I think this has dragged on too long, and we just need to get it moving forward.
But he's involved. He's involved, and
Yeah.
he's.
Yeah, Kevin's been working the
That's-
permits with the
okay.
county for these, and he's been working with Dean on the existing stuff, where we've had issues and sinkholes, et cetera. We just have in the bid that was put out there, it was somewhere in these. I don't have it in the board package. It was focused within wood duck, but we're working the same price structure as had been in the past, where it's a per foot basis and working through a designated number of lots. Kevin's working this particular lots for permits have been applied for this year. It was mostly wood duck this year in a small section in Teal Bay.
I have a question. So what you told us earlier, this is a 3-year program. I did see the quotes from all the contractors. Do you have an estimate of what this is going to cost the association over the 3-year period based on targeted areas that need replacement?
This would be work the same as it has in the past, where we have units described for vendors, and that as we have areas in need that are assessed through either the reserve study or damage, that we would be doing replacements, and it's on a unit basis of per foot. And, I mean, there is not a designated, we're guaranteeing to spend $1 million or $2 million or $500,000 a year, but it's on the as needed, and I believe we're stacked up to over 30 permits going in for this year.
So is there no cyclical repair and replacement program? Is that what you were telling us?
There is not. What's focused on now is the repairs only, and that, I guess, pending the reserve study and, the work that you and Pat and Tom and John are doing, looking at, I mean, a formal program has to be implemented, but this is to be able to get work done this fall. And at this point, we'd like to be starting in less than 60 days, so we need to be able to have a contractor on board and have some path to move forward.
I got a follow-up question. I didn't see a performance bond anywhere in the documentation that was submitted related to this. Have the vendors been asked, or the winning vendor, to have a performance bond for the work they will be conducting?
I'll have to go back to DBF. I don't know what they put in the RFP. DBF conducted this RFP independently of us, and DBF handled that process, and DBF is who brought these documents back for the board presentation today. If we had noted in the bid a bid bond, a performance bond, we can certainly do that. If we didn't, I don't see an issue with any of the vendors in providing a bond, but I would suspect that if it wasn't cited in the terms they bid, we're going to pay the cost of that bond, which would be 1.5% to 2% on top of the bid price.
And I'm perfectly comfortable with that, because if we are talking about 10,000 linear feet over a 3-year period, you're talking about a sizable amount of money in the area of, if it's $250 a foot, you're talking about $2.5 million. a performance bond for a project of this nature that's, you're talking about a 50-year lifespan of a product and workmanship, I think it's prudent for us to have a performance bond in that case, and I'm sure you know, I'm talking about a performance bond, not a bid bond. So I think I would be very much in favor that we clarify this before I would award a 3-year contract to a vendor for this very important infrastructure project. Those are my reservations, is the performance bond and what recourse we have if things don't work out.
Well, Jeremy Tucker would be doing the contract on this, and I would agree with you on the performance bond. And what I would say, if we could, if we can, I guess, caveat the approval that if the original bid documents did not require a performance bond, that we'd be granted an allowance in the award of up to 2% for the cost of the performance bond to be added into the award. Is that fair?
Dave?
Sorry, Cheryl.
In the past, we had, and I'm going to say a number which may or may not be entirely accurate, but we had a 20-year plan for the replacement of our bulkheads. And that was designed so that we had a way of scheduling over time and allocating funds associated with that. We're not in that position currently. And the work that Pat, you and the rest of the group are doing relative to our reserve study will incorporate that, if I understood what Brett just said. So I'm wondering if it wouldn't be more prudent to just have a 1-year contract until we are in a position to have that new 20-year plan, or whatever the right number is, in place to work towards, and then be bidding. If that's appropriate, then my question is, was this contractor's bid contingent on them getting at least a 3-year contract? Or could we go back and say, let's just have a 1-year contract till we see where we are, we'll deal with what our immediate needs are, then we'll incorporate in the work that we're doing with the reserve study, and then have a longer-term contract and perhaps get better pricing as a result of that.
I would say if we want to do it as 1 year, just given that the reserve study is carried on longer than I think anyone would like, let's just do it as a 1 year with options. So if we put 2 additional renewal terms that we have the right to renew, just so that the right's there to exercise if we're not ready, and if we are, that we can go and rebid. I think that would be fair.
And I would definitely want to see the T's and C's for that contract before or after Jeremy Tucker reviews them. I do want to see them. It's very important. It's a large multi-million-dollar relationship.
Yeah, I still have some questions in my mind. We're moving away. Well, first of all, you mentioned the reserve study several times, and I have to say, although all of it has to be considered, and certainly bulkheads will be one of them, there's kind of been a bigger focus on the replacement reserves. It's the more complicated, not the biggest necessarily, but it's more complicated of the various reserves we have. The bulkhead reserve over the years has been simply replenished by the amount of the surcharge that we placed on the, largely not in, of course we have our own bulkheads, but it's been largely by the lot owners who have bulkheads. I mean, we place that surcharge in, and there's only a fixed number of them, and so we get the same amount in every year. I don't know that there's going to be a whole lot to study. I mean, really what it will depend upon is the condition of our bulkheads and how much money we feel like we need to expend. And we've kind of moved off the cyclical. We do it every year, and then we come to the end, and we start it all over again. And I just don't know what that implies. And relevant to Cheryl's question, why not a one-year contract if we're only doing repairs on certain spaces, places? I guess I don't understand, Brett, when you talk about the reserve study, how that, what you're looking for, how that comes into play.
On the previous program, we were doing replacements off of lifespan, and we had a 25-year product, and we were trying to work the replacements as close to that 25-year cycle. We're back now to that same 25-year cycle. The ones that were done 20 years ago are coming up to a point of they're at the average lifespan. So, yeah, I mean, the benefit now is we're at the same price going into a product that should last twice as long, would probably require maintenance at points during the cycle because the vinyl itself is a longer product than the wood, but, we'll still have the same issues of bolts, deteriorating, and, there are still wood components in there that would deteriorate, but it would be a more of a repair than replacement initiative when we get into those later years of life. But the basis outside of what's completely broken, if we don't have a lot broken in a given year, we should be proactively going after, the ones that would be imminently failing, so we don't have a midsummer replacement, and we're looking at those aged assets and replacing them in a preventative fashion rather than a reactive.
Dave? I feel comfortable with that 1 year, with the option of 2 additional, because, I mean, that locks the price in, that we have it for at least 3 years if we want that option, and we can go to a different price after a year. So I think the 1 year with the 2 additional years, each additional year option for 2 additional years is probably the best move.
We have a motion in a second, and basically the motion will include the fact that you're going to use the microphone. I'm sorry. The motion will include the fact that it'll be a 1-year contract with 2-year option, 2 1-year options.
With bond.
And a performance bond, contingent on that. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay. We're down to RFP for road traffic. Tom Harris. Down to RFP, I'm sorry, for road striping. I thought that was not accepted for that was not, oh, no, there was, you're right.
Food and beverage table?
Food and beverage was tabled,
Was tabled?
yes. Yeah, the financial audit, Slobodan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I motion this board approves an in-depth financial audit, and this board oversees the selection of a third-party auditor or a firm with forensic auditing skills to conduct detailed examination of the association's records and point-of-sale systems related to the food and beverage venues and other operations areas if the initial audit work discovers it to be necessary. Background. Months ago, I recommended this board undertake a forensic independent audit because of specific events that transpired since that time and concerns expressed by certain employees. The nature of their concerns should not be ignored. Discussion. On Monday, July 10th, I informed this board of my intent to submit this motion. In the same email, I requested that the old Micros point-of-sale systems remain the property of the association and are not to be disposed of, or any other POS or IT equipment. I further requested that the physical inventory of such equipment be checked against the assets list. Thank you.
Do I have a second? Tom?
I have some concerns with this motion. Months ago, when Mr. Trendick brought this up to the board about having a forensic audit done, the board majority agreed to wait until after the final results of the current audit was complete before we discussed this matter. I only received late yesterday afternoon an emailed copy of the auditor's report, and I have not had the chance to review that report and see the details of what that report encompassed. Additionally, you're asking for approval of an audit, but we don't know what the cost would be to the association for that audit. We don't know what the period of time we're looking to cover for this audit that you're asking for approval. And we don't even know the scope. You talk about beverage venues, public works, and certain projects. Well, what is that? That's not defined. So I don't see what the cost would be for approval. I don't see what time period we're looking to cover. I don't see the scope. And yet I haven't read the audit report that we agreed as the board majority that we would get to review before we decided if we would even proceed with a complete financial audit.
I believe that we did agree to wait. However, whatever you have that you were referring to, Tom, is actually not the final report. Pat indicated to us when she was giving her report that she asked our current auditors to do a deep dive. The results of that have yet not been put into a report. So what we just received, which was the year-end audit, is not the final bit of information that we're going to receive. And I think that we do, excuse me, I think that we do need to wait for that information. I don't disagree that it is appropriate to maintain all of the POS systems, that they not be disposed of until we have the final deep dive of the current audit that's being done.
Related to that, those SC&H did a inventory of all that equipment, and they do have that from their field research. Nothing has been disposed of, and I mean, for other reasons, that equipment is not going anywhere. I mean, that part of the, that part of the discussion's a mute point. I mean, this motion's changed a lot of times since the July 10th email. And the July 10th email was actually, I believe, directed initially at me and looking at a forensic audit for some accusations that were made against me, and then now it's being turned to, Tom cited in his reading Public Works and other areas. This just says food and beverage. So I don't even know, I mean, we agreed as a board on an action back in February that Pat described earlier that we went through with our existing auditor, and we have already made an investment there, and we need those findings before we can make any decision on where to go as a board.
Yes, as I talked about earlier, the auditors, our current auditors, which we did select as a board from a group of auditors, we did unanimously approve SCH. It's in the minutes of, it's in one of the budget. I just looked at them. I looked at those this morning, and it says, it was all three firms had initials. It's SCH, which is the firm we chose, TGM, which was the firm we had, and PKS, I think, which is a Salisbury firm. Anyway, the board chose SCH, which is a Baltimore firm that I had used those, but being a financial person, I was familiar with them. They are a very well-respected audit firm. I feel very comfortable, very large, well-respected Baltimore firm. I feel very comfortable with them. And in addition, right now, as I said earlier, in addition to the financial statement audit, which really doesn't go into, they do check controls, and there's a management letter if there are any internal control issues. That comes out of a regular financial statement audit. We don't even have that yet, and we definitely don't have the more in-depth review and audit of our transactions. All our transaction points, food and beverage, whatever, would be the normal financial transactions for an organization, were being reviewed in depth by the audit firm, and we will have a written report on that. We do not have that report yet, so I could not vote for, and I know there will be recommendations from that report. I talked to the partner, and I already know there are recommendations. I don't know what they are, but I know there will be recommendations. And I can't support moving forward on anything else until we know the results of that. And then the idea of forensic, I mean, to my knowledge, a forensic audit is to accumulate information for a criminal trial. And I don't know that we're going in that area yet, and they're extremely expensive if you're going to hire somebody, reliable. So I'd rather take this a step at a time. We have the financial statement audit. Nothing blew up in that, and we will have the additional procedure audit shortly.
Just to respond to a couple of things that Director Supik mentioned. First of all, I have not found any records of the board approving the auditor that was hired last fall. I reviewed all the minutes of the meetings, and I have not found a single meeting where that was voted by the entire board. I believe that was a unilateral decision by the general manager. The issue related to cost, we all know that audits, especially of this nature, are a necessity, and they're not done because they're cheap. If the issue is a cost, you can always suggest a friendly amendment to the motion. The average price of the forensic auditor is from between $300 to $500. As far as the cost of the audit, it really depends upon the scope. Until the audit gets started, it's very hard to figure out what the total cost is, because as you know, forensic audit is kind of like a treasure hunt. You follow the transactions, you follow the paper trail. But the reason I bring this up, I mean, we all know over the past few months what was discussed in closed sessions. And we need to be reminded of some of the remarks that were made about some improper behaviors. And you all recall the termination of number of people from the yacht club. And acting general manager referring to numbers that were pretty concerning to me. So, as far as I'm concerned, this is not about whether it's cheap or expensive. This is about doing due diligence, and especially with regard to food and beverage, losing so much money. For us, not to proceed with a forensic audit with this particular part of the operation is basically to ignore what we've been observing. I don't think the audit is going to cost more than a food truck was proposed last year. But let's face it, this is not whether you can afford it or not. I think this is, to me, a good business practice. And anybody that's been part of the environment that we have experienced for the past several months, and some of the things that acting GM has commented on is concerning to me. And I will not go forward with this because of a cost. First of all, the cost is not an issue. And second of all, I think this is our fiduciary responsibility to take this seriously.
I believe, for clarity's sake, Pat, there was not a board vote on this. There were a group of people, yourself included, that reviewed the responses to the RFP and then collectively made a decision. I do think still that it's premature to want to go this route until we get the additional information from the audit that we have been paying for, and we need to see what they have found before we say we need to go further in one direction or another. I mean, let's wait for those results. Mr. Hills assured us that the equipment that you've asked to be retained will be retained, and we cannot be more than a few weeks probably from getting this other report that gives us the balance of the information. And so nothing untoward is going to happen to us in the next couple of weeks, I believe. So I appreciate your concern in bringing this forward, but I think it's premature at this point.
As just a point of reference, on Friday, February 10th at 10 a.m., there was a board meeting in the administrative building. Present were Tom Herrick, Brett Hill, Cheryl Jacobs, Doug Parks, and Dave Stevens and Pat Supik. Participated by phone. Slobodan Trendic was absent. I made the motion to approve SC&H as the audit firm for fiscal 17 for the Ocean Pines Association. It was seconded by Director Jacobs, and the motion was passed by all 6 directors present.
Can I follow my senior sword? I wasn't disputing.
I had the same
I wasn't
experience.
disputing that we were in agreement, but I'll follow my senior sword.
Yeah, I had the same.
Mike.
Sorry, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion? The motion is oh, come on. Do you have a copy? Okay, sorry. It's in here. I move the board approve forensic financial audit, and this board be totally in charge of the selection. That's the wrong motion. Thank you. I motion this board approves an in-depth financial audit, and this board oversee the selection of a third-party auditor or a firm with forensic auditing skills to conduct detailed examination of the association's records and POS systems related to the food and beverage venues and other operational areas if the initial audit work discovers it to be necessary. I'll now call the question on that motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion fails. 5-1. I don't want it. You can have it.
Okay. I have a motion, move that the Board of Directors direct the acting general manager to issue an RFP to invite bidders to submit proposals for street line painting of the following roads in Ocean Pines: Ocean Parkway, Cathell Road, and Yacht Club Drive. The background is in the spring of 2016, the Board of Directors approved the contract for street line painting in Ocean Pines. The quality and visibility of the current striping is insufficient. With no road lighting in the community, the old lines are the only means to navigate safely, and they are currently insufficient to serve in that manner.
I'll second.
Dave? Discussion. Discussion should include exploring a better quality of paint application to enhance visibility, particularly during the most critical weather periods. It should include exploring the advantages of a double bead application and options of applying various types of painting, including, but not limited to, the use of an epoxy or hot thermoplastic paints. Although more costly, The extended life cycle and safety provided may well be worth the extra cost. I believe it is time for this board to refocus on our issues that promote safety and add to making our community more attractive.
Discussion? Questions? Yeah, how long ago was it that we just had those lines painted?
Last spring.
Last spring, and they're worn off already. Was there an alternative to what we did last spring that would be, in fact?
I wasn't on the board or in this role, so I don't know.
Yeah, I remember that pretty well. The park was one of the major.
Dave, the proposal for the street line painting back in that spring, and the contract that was recommended by the staff was using a less experienced and smaller company. The price was less than half the price of the other bid. It was $24,570 for SLS, who was awarded the bid, as opposed to Chesapeake and Salisbury at $61,342, and J&B declined due to a scheduling conflict. So the bid was awarded to a company less than I should say half the price of the other competing company.
So basically, the vote is to go out with an RFP to the contractor to be decided by the next board. That's good. I like that. Can I call the question?
The only question I have, Dave, I was just talking to Director Jacobs quickly. This is not budgeted item, is it, for this fiscal year? Or would this be coming out of different funds other than operating funds?
I have no idea what the dollar amount of something like this is. Capital?
$50.
$1,000?
Yeah, roughly.
Oh, that's capital, I think. That, it would be repair and replacement, which, right.
Not the operational budget, it just come out of reserves. Yeah.
All those in favor? The next one. Motion, accounting transparency, Brett Hill.
I'm making a motion to set a policy for transparent in the accounting records of the Ocean Pines Association. The policy would include publishing to all directors and where legally permissible publicly the detailed monthly financial statements, the monthly log of all purchase orders, and the monthly check register for the Ocean Pines operating accounts. As a background, currently only summary financials are provided to board members and the public. Department heads are provided detailed statements, but to no one else. For a GM and a board to make better decisions on the financial health of the association, more detailed information is required to have adequate background knowledge. As we were exploring other software options from the other motion, that capital purchase that we didn't get into, the standard within those software was to create board packages that include detailed financial as well as purchasing and operating account registers to board members.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion.
My discussion on it was that transparency with financials provides not only education to corporate officers and the membership, but provides accountability to the staff, knowing their financial habits will be fully visible to everyone.
Sure.
I will say that transparency is always a good thing. I think I took a look at the purchase orders for the first time since that has just been put in the Dropbox, and I found it rather illuminating, I must say, which potentially raises questions about things for me. I don't really want to be in a position of looking that closely at everything, but that's probably a good thing. I'm just wondering if it wouldn't be prudent to include both Mr. Bailey and Mr. Viola, who's off, darn him, in Italy having a great time while we're here suffering, to bring this issue back up at that time, as well as a new board. You will recall that last year, when a new board came in, they made us put a halt to everything, stop everything that you're doing. They wanted to nitpick all of it, but I do think in this case, it's definitely a good thing to be more transparent, no question about that. But I'd like to have Mr. Bailey and Mr. Viola weigh in on this.
I wasn't here when you started talking, so if I'm repeating what you said, just let me know. I support the idea of transparency. I'm just not sure of the staff time involved in something like this, and the last thing I want to do at this point in time in the accounting office is do anything that creates, requires more staff time than maybe we can adequately cover. And maybe there, not this detail, maybe there are other ways to get that information easily to a board, rather than, I support the concept, I'm just not sure about the devils of the details, I'm not sure about the details.
Well, the purchase order report that I put out, it was a report that I was able to get through Lansa, but, in a very short time period, I won't have access to that, and that was the first time I found that report, and it's a 2-second click the button to do it. As far as the detailed financials go, I repeatedly asked for those detailed financials because when I would be meeting with staff about their budget, they had a different sheet than I did. And I was told from the staff that the board doesn't want to look at details, so we just give them the summary, and that's what you have to work with. I don't find that answer acceptable, and I feel that the details are important because when you look at a number like payroll, and payroll is a huge number on every one of our budgets, seeing where that's actually broken down and into overtime costs, et cetera, those are all elements that I believe are valuable to a board and important for making decisions. And I don't know how we can be expected to do our job if we're not given the same information the staff is, and we're ultimately the body that's supposed to set direction and approve the budgets out of that staff.
I agree totally with better information to the board. It's something that I have wanted to do this year, given the change in the finance department. It's been a bit challenging. I'm not sure the detail is for a board at board level is really efficient and effective, but there are many measures that I believe the board should have. Overtime, one of them. FTE count, actual versus budget by department, those kind of things that the board could look at in a very short period of time and assess where we are budget-wise. I think those kind of metrics are desperately needed by this board to make decisions. But again, I think our director of finance could be, and our new GM could be instrumental in working to develop. That would be a goal for me for the coming year for the board. As I said, it was for this past year, but changes in the accounting department didn't allow it. We need that. We need the input clearly and the expertise of our director of finance. So.
Well, I have a question, and it revolves around Pat's concerns. From what I'm reading here, the department heads are already provided these reports, so they are available, and what you're asking is for the board to have that information as well?
Yes.
Well, all right, thank you.
I have a question and a comment. Well, first of all, I totally feel the way Director Jacobs and Director Supik feel in regard to having the new GM as well as having a Director of Finance give us their thoughts on how much of effort it would be to have this information assembled for the board on a regular basis. Furthermore, I believe this is the kind of information that would be very beneficial to Budget and Finance Committee on a regular basis. I would be more inclined to have the committee have access to that information and then, kind of compress it in a management reporting mode that can be brought to the board's attention if it requires board's attention. So I am really looking for this kind of input from two sources, Director of Finance and the new GM, as well as the Budget and Finance Committee. That would be my take. Put this on hold for a few weeks.
That is an absolutely excellent recommendation. That committee generally has members with significant financial background. Working with the Director of Finance could be very, very productive in developing a report for the board. You know, I've always had boards that wanted a 1 or 2 page report. They didn't want volume. But 1 or 2 pages that really got to the meat of the matter. And so I think that's a great idea.
Excuse me, because your motion specifically asks us to set a policy, I think that it is a policy that at some point will need to be established by this board because we are the policy-setting entity. But we should do that in conjunction with the new GM and the Director of Finance. And I would recall for all of you that we tasked ourselves with creating a transition plan for the incoming GM. And we have been derelict in not working on that. And that is some really important work that we should set about crafting so that we, as a board, know how we're going to transition with our new GM. And this would be applicable to the incoming new board as well. And so I would ask that we would incorporate a goal like this as a part of that transition plan.
Yeah, I recall way back in the day, going to Art Carmine's office probably once a month and asking him for the detailed reports. Then when my closet got overloaded with detailed reports, they're pretty thick, I took to checking them infrequently, but always at the end of the year. I wanted one of them. They're there. I mean, and they were always there, and they're obviously in electronic form, although I ended up getting the paper copies. I don't know why. I don't see any, I can't imagine there's any special problem with making them available to the board in electronic form. I mean, I don't think that involves any work. It exists, it's in electronic form, give it to the board. They'll see it. Now, as to everybody else, I'd like to think it out a little bit as to whether or not there's any information in those reports which are not normally shown, and that would be specific salary information and so forth, just as our budget books, are separate from that. But I think as a policy, I don't see that it harms to wait for the new GM to come on board. Although I think he's going to have a few more things on his mind than worrying about this. I think the question is, does the board have access to these numbers right now? And should they? I mean, I can answer the should they question pretty easily. I think they should. So, I'm not sure, Brett, what exactly you had in mind in terms of how far these things are going to be disseminated and to whom.
Well, at the very least to us, and like I said, we're permissible. I don't know why, we would be reluctant to hold back. I mean, our neighboring governments, which, they are not HOAs, they're governments, they post their purchase orders, their checks, their detail out there so that their constituency can see what they're doing. And especially looking at, our finances right now, I think, the more we can do to, promote transparency and the efforts that we as a board and operation of the staff are taking, there's no harm in that being visible.
Yeah, I guess that's what I was kind of poking at and looking for. I mean, What harm can there be in it? I mean, that's a question.
I guess I'm lost. Where is it now? Can I get to it now?
Well, it has been pulling teeth for me to get that information.
Well, then-
And I'm supposed to be the GM, and when I can't get detailed financials, and when I struggle to get access to purchase orders, I think that's a problem. And how is someone supposed to manage if they can't get the data? And as a board, I think that data is important too, because having a summary and saying, okay, we lost, whatever at food and beverage, not being able to look at the detail of how that money was spent, I think, we're left to make assumptions, and if we're supposed to be setting the policy, we should be able to have the education behind there, and no one's forcing any board member to go and look at it, but they have the access if you have the questions, and that's part of what Slowbound's been looking for, is the answers to questions. Well, let's put the answers out there so that they're there for everyone, and there's nothing to hide behind. Let's just get it on the table.
Already produced, isn't it?
Yeah, they print it, and it just doesn't come to us.
But before they print it, there's an electronic version.
Yes.
That electronic version could be put on our webpage, just as everything else is. And is there any reason why it shouldn't be?
I can't think of any reason why it shouldn't be. I just didn't want to create more work, and quite honestly, if you haven't been in finance, you don't know how you can have 50 pages of numbers, and somebody's got to interpret those. That's the important part. That's where I see our Director of Finance and the Treasurer and the Budget and Finance Committee. That is critical to me, that group bring to the board. We were over in FTEs, we were under in FTEs, we were too much overtime, that kind of information. That's where all our money spent, is salaries, pretty much. And so I'm totally for the transparency. I don't have an issue with that. If it's already out there and it's not creating staff work, I can support it. I'm just not sure it's going to be the end game. It's different for a GM. A GM has to have access to that information. A board member access, but do they want to sit there and try to interpret it? Do they want to add up all the columns of, I don't know,
Some people have fun with that. They do.
Whatever gets you up in the morning.
Yeah, right.
I see that as the difference between setting a policy and simply dumping data. Absolutely dump the data so that it's out there, but I think that's a little bit different than setting a policy and how far you want to go with the reports that are going to be generated associated with that. And so that was my thinking about let's involve the other parties in this process.
My policy request was to be able to make the data available, because the impediment should not be there for us to get it. Impediments.
I think it's almost more like board direction.
Yeah, I think that's.
So we're directing you to do it. That would be the motion. Is that right? It's okay.
So please amend the motion as to what will be the proper verbiage there.
Well, we'll get policy out of there and just say we're directing him to make that available.
Direct the staff to make available.
Yeah. In an electronic form, as soon as they're available. That's not.
As long as it's not payroll information.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want them dumping the ADP report on my,
That wasn't asked for, because
Okay.
anything in there, that doesn't go through any of the areas. Payroll's on its own account.
Okay.
It's handled separately. That's nothing I'd asked for there.
Okay. So the next webpage we look at under financials, details, it's there. And it would, now, let me ask this. I know as a board member it's useful, has been in the past, but why would it not be made available to the membership? Huh? So do we have the motion written down? I guess that's what do you got over there?
Amended to remove set policy and change to direct staff to make available.
Okay. In electronic form. Yeah, I don't want people going in there and getting, ready to copy. Okay.
I'll second
call
your
the
amendment.
question.
I'll second your amendment.
Okay, thank you. I'll call the question. All those in favor?
As amended?
As amended. Aye. We just did. Okay, we'll vote on the amendment. Okay, we just did. Now do we accept the resolution as amended? We all do. Well, we know what we. Okay. Social media policies.
Okay, so I have a attached policy that came from Jeremy Tucker to this motion. The motion is to adopt the attached social media policy as drafted by Jeremy Tucker to fully disclose the use of social media accounts to users of those pages. In the background, currently, the Ocean Pines Association only has a policy posted on its own websites, but needs to post a policy on other social media platforms that it uses. It came to my attention that as a public service organization, somewhat related to the issue, we get into the unique predicament with the Oasis Pool, that because their page is managed by the HOA and on accounts like Facebook, we have to disclose what's going on that page, and if we want to block people from the page or delete comments that might be negative to the association, that has to be disclosed, and as well as the nature of any comments that go onto the page needs to be disclosed. So what was presented to me in discussions with Mr. Tucker was either to take down all of our pages, which I do believe provide long-term marketing value to the association, or to adopt a policy for those pages that would be displayed when the users like them on the cover page of those accounts, so that if they do post comments, and if the comments are vulgar or outside of the nature of the HOA, that we would have the right to remove them, and that we can effectively manage our public presentation, that social presence. The motion was to adopt the attached social media policy as drafted by Jeremy Tucker to fully disclose the use of social media accounts to users of those pages. That's the motion.
Ladies first.
Long overdue. We do not want to be in a position of jeopardy with this, and so long overdue. I'm totally in favor of it.
I just would like to add a comment. I did look at the policy. Where I have a concern is that the right for us to edit the content becomes very subjective by a person that's actually editing. There's a difference between terms and conditions of the use of our website, our forum, versus right to edit the content. And I'm a little uncomfortable with how is someone within the association going to properly determine under what conditions a content posted by someone is inappropriate. A vulgar language or any other defamatory remarks can be controlled by terms and conditions of the use of the forum, and the person has to agree to those T's and C's. But editing a content, to me, it's almost like borderline censorship, and I believe I would like to get more clarity from Mr. Tucker on that issue, because it puts too much power in the person that's editing the content, and perhaps a potential liability if the person that was being edited does not agree with the action taken by us. That's where I have a concern, and I would just like a legal clarity on that to make sure that we are okay legally to do that.
Well, it did come from our attorney, and the reason that we're doing it is so that we have that ability. I don't know what else to tell you. The policy was drafted by Lurch, Hurley, and Brewer and it was put out for those reasons.
It does enumerate what you will be able to, or how you will be able to,
The content?
yeah, how you will be able, on what basis will the content be removed or changed? So it does lay out the specifics of that, and a person who agrees to use it has to agree to that, those restrictions.
I don't think you're talking about edited content, you're talking about removing. It's a big difference.
I believe the policy does allow for editing the content, if I'm not mistaken. I read it early in the morning this morning, so I'd like to have Brett clarify. You have access. I don't have online access.
The policy itself is written for editing or removal. However, Facebook does not give us the right to edit. So in the terms of Facebook, which is what this policy is written around, while the policy gives us the right to do that, the platform does not, so it would strictly be removal.
Platform on your own form does allow you to edit.
Yeah, I believe that's what the language said, if I remember. That's my concern. You know better than any of us how this works.
It says refuse, move, or remove any content.
I think I saw edit.
Here's where it talks about moving content.
The policy should cover your own forum as well as Facebook.
There's nothing in there about editing.
Okay, can I call the question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Next motion. I move that Gary Miller be removed as a member.
Mike. I move that Gary Miller be removed as a member of the Club's Advisory Committee and the Aquatics Advisory Committee for actions detrimental to the association and outside of the assigned responsibilities of an advisory committee member. Background. Bylaw Section 10 states that the board shall ascertain from time to time whether all committees are functioning and fulfilling their assigned responsibilities. All members serve at the pleasure of the board and may be removed by the board with or without cause at any time. Discussion. Mr. Miller, who is a visible and vocal member of both committees, has used his position to, 1, continue to publicly debate board decisions that did not agree with his advice, 2, recruit advocates to vocally support a personally held position on a matter that was under active board consideration, and 3, very publicly disparage the board and management in the local media. These took the form of vitriolic attacks that were devoid of facts and filled with innuendo. They were disguised in the form of questions, presumably to avoid litigation for slander and libel. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion. Globanon.
Thank you. I am totally against the motion. I believe any homeowner of this association has a right to publicly voice his or her opinion with regard to either the management or the board itself. And many of times, the homeowners have gone to the newspaper and critiqued the board and the performance, as well as the management. To take that right away from a homeowner that happens to be a member of two clubs, two committees, I believe is really getting us into a gray area of censorship. And I will not accept that. Let's face it, we all have written to the papers ourselves, including me, including the acting general manager, and we have signed those letters in that official capacity. I had signed my letter, and Brett has signed his letter, and other board members have done the same. We have not been punished, removed from the board for doing so. I think it's a fundamental freedom of speech and the right to voice one's opinion. I don't think Mr. Miller spoke on behalf of the committee. He didn't sign the letter as a committee member, but purely as a homeowner. So I am totally against it for a fundamental reason, two reasons. It's a borderline censorship, and it's really taking away the freedom of speech of our association members.
Tom?
Well, I'm surprised at your comments only because they're totally opposite of what you had spoken about last September, where you came out totally against what his comments were, that they were unprofessional, inappropriate, and reflected negatively on the board and its individual directors. And now you're saying it's perfectly okay. His continued rants are offensive, defamatory, and with a complete lack of civility. He has continued to conduct himself in an unprofessional and inappropriate manner, despite the second chance that was afforded to him. We're certainly not censuring a homeowner from saying what it is. This person is a committee member, and he serves at the pleasure of the board. He abuses his position on various committees to serve as a platform of his own personal agenda, both through the press and through the minutes of the meetings. I'm actually surprised that association members would support this kind of conduct if they actually want us as a community to heal and unite together to allow this to continue from a committee member. We are not censoring any individual statements from any association member. But we have to discuss it. Is this serving at the pleasure of the board to continue as a committee member? That's the question. No censorship of anybody's thoughts. That's all free will, and they can say whatever they want. The problem is he's serving as a committee member, and he's supposed to help the board. I don't see that in the duties of a committee member to constantly disparage both boards and employees of the board, of this association. That's the difference I see. So I'm totally in favor of this motion.
It's unfortunate, I believe, that differences of opinion are characterized as disparagement. People need to have a little bit tougher skins, I think, so that they can absorb criticism without taking it so personally. This is a very slippery slope, in my opinion, one that I am adamantly opposed to. We have a difficult position getting people to volunteer. This is a long-standing member of committees who has volunteered many, many hours. The fact that he makes suggestions, which you may characterize as criticisms, are simply critiques on how things could be improved. There's nothing wrong with that. He also has exercised his free speech right as an individual property owner in this community, and he has every right to do that without fear that that there will be retribution for doing so. We have not, at this point in time, unlike what you've referenced, happened last September, we've not had a recommendation from the committee to ask for him to be removed. The committee obviously believes that there is value in having him as a committee member. And I, as a board member, value his volunteerism to try to improve things in this community. And if he wants to critique what we do and suggest how we might do it better, or eliminate something that we're doing that might be harmful to the community, then he has every right to do that. And I have to have skin tough enough to accept that. And I would hope the rest of you would as well. I think when this motion was proposed by Mr. Hill wearing his director hat at the last meeting, when it was voted down, there was a clear message being sent at that time. It is exactly the same motion. It's being presented by a different person. I still believe this is trying to get the second bite at the apple, and that's completely inappropriate. Totally, totally against this motion.
Dave. Some more comments?
Dave.
I'm sorry, Pat.
I'm not supportive of this motion either. I feel that if we start as a board to worry about, censor, whatever the verb is you want to put in there, everybody that goes to one of our newspapers and complains, maybe complains vehemently, maybe not in a nice way, maybe maybe not even true as a homeowner, say things that, and gets in the newspaper. And I just don't think we should, try to control that. We can't control that. As a homeowner, he has a right to go to the newspaper. She has a right. I have a right. Whoever's here has a right to go to the newspaper. The newspaper can or cannot print it. But I feel like it's not in our purview or in our best interest to in any way sanction a member of the community going to one of our newspapers.
Yeah, of course, Pat, if you're done, this motion doesn't do that. It doesn't sanction him as a member of the community for going to the newspapers or, spreading whatever he wants to in the newspapers, however unfair and untrue it may be, however vitriolic it may be, however damaging it may be, because the only recourse really is not anything the board can do about that. It's only what the individual who's being slandered can do about it. But on the other hand, he is representative, and there is nobody that doesn't know that he in fact is on two committees, and he's an active and vocal member of those two committees. And when he sends the letter to the newspaper, he in fact is implying that it's coming from those committees. I do. No? Well, let me tell you this. I mean, I basically was going to write this motion. I had written it before I heard anything from Brett, so it has nothing to do with that. I mean, I served as liaison to the club's committee for this year. After Slobodan removed himself or was removed from liaison for that committee, after Slobodan recommended that Gary Miller be removed from the committee. We said we don't.
Let me respond to that because, first of all, it's getting off track. Mr. Miller and I had a gentleman discussion last fall. He understood exactly why I asked for his removal, and it was no secret because actually he and the then Chair Les was copied on my email. I was being fully transparent. It had to do with his performance on the committee, and I, as a liaison, had a right to take action, but it wasn't because Mr. Miller was against me as a previous candidate to the board, and he didn't like me as a candidate. In fact, we had a very cordial discussion after the fact. He understood why I took the action that I did, and that's it. It had nothing to do with his status as a homeowner. It had to do with his role on the committee. So I reject the notion and remarks made by Director Herrick and you. And see, if you think I'm wrong, Mr. Miller can certainly respond and validate that what I said is true. But back to the motion.
Well,
I'm strongly
back-
against it.
Well, I know you're going to vote against it. Let me continue. The question was also, is this me unilaterally doing this, or were there problems with other committees? And I was called by the chair of the Aquatics Committee, and basically I was making the motion to remove Mr. Miller from my own personal observations and from what he has written in here from the Clubs Committee. I was asked by the chair of the Aquatics Committee to remove him from the Aquatics Committee as well. So don't tell me that there weren't any committee members that were seeking his removal. I didn't poll the committee members. I didn't, or either one of them. But on the other hand, what Mr. Miller is doing is antithetical to the role and responsibility of an advisory committee meeting. He's not being thrown out of the association. He can write a dozen letters to the papers, and he can start this afternoon. But on the other hand, he can't do that and serve the board, and at the pleasure of the board, as an advisory committee. He can't make a recommendation to the board and then say, well, you didn't follow my recommendation, therefore, I'll get a bunch of people in here and we'll show you a thing or two. You can't say he's going to make a recommendation to the board and then accuse the general manager, in convoluted terms, I grant you, of theft. I mean, that's what these letters came down to. One thing after another. There's one, when did you stop beating your wife question after another in here. Every single one of them is that way, every single one of them. So I'm on the board. It is not my pleasure that Mr. Miller serve on the board any longer. That's why I'm making the motion. Any other comments?
For the record, the reason Mr. Miller and a lot of other homeowners are writing the letters they are writing to the newspapers is because they see that this board has failed to act. This board has failed to take actions related to the acting general manager, and they have no other outlet but to go to the newspapers and voice their opinion. So I think we need to realize that the backlash coming from the community is really as a result of a board not addressing the issues related to the acting general manager management performance.
That's an opinion. And my opinion is that it's an orchestrated attempt to disparage the general manager and the board that supports him. But that's, our opinions are personal. The issue is Mr. Miller's conduct as a member of a board advisory committee.
Let's continue to try to be transparent. And if we're going to be transparent, you holding up an article and citing specifically what you believe he was alleging against Mr. Hill is clearly that this is an act of revenge. What damage has he caused for the committee, which should be the one and only basis for his removal from a committee? Not what he's written in a paper, and clearly he did not sign it as a committee member, and you may want to put that label on it. It doesn't exist. You do that simply to bolster your argument. The real reason we remove people from committees is because they are damaging or causing harm to the committee. He's done none of that. There is no way to support a motion to remove him for any damage that he's caused to the committees. It is simply retaliation. And that kind of behavior really needs to stop on this board once and for all.
Obviously, Cheryl. I disagree with the retaliation. Anybody can get up and leave if they want to. This is a board meeting, and we're having a discussion, and we continue the discussion until it's over. You can call it whatever you want, Cheryl. You can call it retaliation. But on the other hand, this is written, in a way that is damaging. It's damaging to the board. It's damaging to the general manager. It's certainly not the actions that are appropriate to a member of a committee that is supposed to support and advise the board. That's my point. And it's not revenge. It's not retaliation. I've listened to Mr. Miller throughout the entire year. I've corrected minutes that Mr. Miller has written because he referenced things that weren't even said in the meeting. I'm sorry, Cheryl, it's not retaliation.
Cheryl, you mentioned a basis for removal. There is no basis. There is no category that there is cause. It could be removed at any time at the pleasure of the board. They serve at the pleasure of the board. So you're talking about basis, what the basis is? Has the right to remove. It's simple as that. If you think that this conduct that's constant serves at the pleasure or your pleasure, what's going on with that? I'm sorry, I have to disagree. I think that conduct is very unprofessional and it's appalling. Personally, it's appalling to me. And no, I don't think he's fit to serve on the committee with that type of conduct. Yes, ma'am.
No further discussion. Call the question. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. All those opposed? Okay. 3-3. The motion fails. Committee appointments. Without objection, I'll read all three and ask for approval of the board. Harold Dick Kelling, first term Budget and Finance. Lisa Schwartz, Chair, ARC. Larry Bohannon, first term Clubs. Any objections to any of these appointments? Being no objections, I appoint these three to the committee. Can I have a call? What? All in favor? Aye. I don't need a vote. It's without objection. Yeah. I got one right, Joe? Just one? All right.
I have a motion.
What?
I have a motion.
You have a motion?
Yeah, for adjournment.
Was that enjoyment or adjournment?
Adjournment.
I second that motion.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.